Το Toronto Economic Forum της 7ης Νοεμβρίου του 2024 διοργανώθηκε με μεγάλη επιτυχία. Αυτή η ετήσια διοργάνωση γίνεται από το Δελφή Οικονομικό Φόρουμ σε συνεργασία με την ελληνική πρωτοβουλία The Hellenic Initiative Canada και σε συνεργασία με το Εμπορικό Επιμελητήριο Καναδά-Ελλάδας και το Ελληνοκαναδικό Συμβούλιο Εμπορίου. Είμαι ο Ανδρέας Μπατάκης και φυσικά το Greca TV ήταν και φέτος παρόν ώστε να μοιραστεί μαζί σας εικόνες και μέρος των ομιλιών και συζητήσεων που έλαβαν χώρα. Η αποστολή αυτού του φόρουμ είναι να επιδιώξει να προωθήσει νέες ευκαιρίες για περαιτέρω οικονομική συνεργασία, να αναδείξει τις επενδυτικές ευκαιρίες τόσο στον Καναδά όσο και στην Ελλάδα και να εμβαθύνει τους δεσμούς μεταξύ των επιχειρηματικών και πολιτικών ελίτ αλλά και των κοινωνιών των πολιτών των δύο χωρών. Ενώ οι διοργανωτές υπογραμμίζουν ότι ο Καναδάς, όντας από τις πιο εξωστρεφείς χώρες στον κόσμο, παίζει μοναδικό ρόλο στο παγκόσμιο σύστημα. Το Τορόντο, ως μια διεθνή πόλη, ξεχωρίζει για το πλήθος των κοινοτήτων της διασποράς που έχουν τις ρίζες τους στην περιοχή και διαδραματίζουν πολύ ενεργό ρόλο στην κοινωνική, οικονομική και πολιτική ζωή της πόλης. Η ελληνοκαναδική κοινότητα αποτελεί χαρακτηριστικό παράδειγμα και γι' αυτό άλλωστε έχει επιλεγεί το Τορόντο να είναι η πόλη όπου διεξάγεται το φόρουμ τα τελευταία 3 χρόνια. Διότι όπως ανέφερε και ο Πρωθυπουργός της επαρχίας του Οντάριο κατά την ομιλία του, αυτή η πόλη είναι η 4η μεγαλύτερη πόλη της Βόρειας Αμερικής, τονίζοντας ότι η διαφορετικότητα και η πολυπολιτισμικότητα σε συνδυασμό με το υψηλό επίπεδο των μεταναστών αποτελούν μοναδικά ανταγωνιστικά πλεονεκτήματα.
So, my name is Simeon Zomopoulos. I have the honor to represent the Economic Forum in Athens, Greece. Welcome. We thank you very much for joining us. Minister Nikos Papathanasis, we thank you deeply for your presence. Madam Ambassador of Greece to Canada, Kyria Dimaki. I think our Consul General is also here, Mr. Kanzanonakis. Welcome. We're expecting 2 Secretary Generals, Angelos Balerbas from the Ministry of Labour and Madame Irianis from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. It's a great pleasure to have Annie Koutrakis here. Thank you, Annie, for your great support since the establishment of this event. We thank you deeply. And Effie Tridefilopoulou, who actually is in the premiere right now. Ambassador Peck, thank you. So, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, welcome to this third Toronto Economic Forum, which, as you know, is organized by the Delphi Economic Forum with a partnership, a great partnership of the Hellenic Initiative in Greece. We have both co-chairs here, and we'll introduce them shortly. And in association, of course, with the Canada-Greece Chamber of Commerce in Athens, Mr. Katsigiannis is here with us. And the Hellenic-Canadian Board of Trade, Vasilios Tsianos, will join us as well. Of course, with the great support of the Embassy of Greece in Ottawa. Madam Ambassador, thank you. The forum, as perhaps you all know, it is an initiative of the Greek government. It is an initiative of Minister Papathanasis, who I know he doesn't like the word the father of this conference, but definitely the founder of the conference. Thank you very much, and please let's give him an applause. This forum is aiming to enhance further the cordial relations between Canada and Greece, and explore, of course, new avenues of cooperation between the two nations. Greek-Canadian relations, as we know better than me, have a long history, served by political, economic, and cultural interests, and we are proud that the Greek diaspora here is an excellent component to keep up this warm relationship very close. Greek Prime Minister, as you know, was here last March. He had excellent meetings with Prime Minister Trudeau, and that was a remarkable testimony of the betterness of the Canadian-Greek relations that remain very promising. So, we're delighted to be here in Toronto, beautiful city. I opened the curtains of my window today. I love this.
The Hellenic Initiative Canada was founded in order to alleviate the hardships resulting from the Greek economic crisis, but our long-term objective always was to advance economic development in Greece, as that is the best way to develop a thriving society. It is for this reason that we at the Hellenic Initiative Canada were delighted to support the proposal of Minister Papathanasis several years ago to organize the bilateral conference to advance wider economic ties between Greece and Canada. And thank you, Minister. Thank you for being here today again and supporting us again. I'm pleased to extend a special welcome to the large delegations of senior officials from both public and private sectors in Greece. In addition, I'd like to thank Simeon Somokos and his team at Delphi for organizing this event. The Embassy of Greece, the Consulate General here in Toronto, Dionysius in particular, as well as my colleagues at the Hellenic Initiative Canada for their invaluable help in making this event possible. The conference would not have been possible without the impressive array of panelists and speakers, which include eminent leaders from the public as well as the private sectors in both Greece and Canada. I'm grateful for the time and energy, as well as your insights that you have agreed to share with us today here in Toronto in person. Simeon has already recognized some of the dignitaries that are with us. There are a few more I'd just like to mention. I won't repeat the ones that Simeon has mentioned. The Honorable Mary Ng, Minister of International Trade, Export Promotion, Small Business and Economic Development Canada, the Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Tourism and the Minister responsible for the Economic Development Agency of Canada for the regions of Quebec, Annie Petrakis. And Annie, thank you. She has been a stalwart supporter of the Hellenic Initiative from day one. I would like to also recognize MPP and Parliamentary Assistant, Minister of Economic Development, Job Creation and Trade Canada, Effie Piatafilopoulos. I don't know if Effie's here yet. Parliamentary Secretary, Minister of Environment, Climate Change and Energy and Natural Resources, Julie Dabrusin, and Mr. Daniel Tish, President and CEO of the Ontario Chamber of Commerce, who's also attending our conference for the first time. Last but not least, speaking of first-timers, I'm delighted to welcome Ontario's Premier Doug Ford, who is also attending for the first time. Without further ado, I want to welcome you to the third Toronto Economic Forum, and the day contributes to the advance of bilateral economic relations between our two countries. Thank you. Simon?
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, it is truly my distinct honor to present to you Mr. Doug Ford, Premier of Ontario, leader of the Progressive Conservative Party of Ontario and Minister of Intergovernmental Affairs, a dedicated community leader, a successful business leader, and a passionate advocate of the people of his region. Please join me to welcome the Premier on the floor.
Welcome, and Simeon, thank you. And good morning, everyone. It's great to be here today, and I'm thrilled to be here alongside my all-star MPPs, Effie Triantafilopoulos. Effie, where are you? Oh, there you are. Okay. And Eris Babikian for the Toronto Economic Forum here. To begin, I want to acknowledge and welcome the Greek Ambassador and Consul General and alternate Minister of Economy and Finance. Nico, it's great to see you again. Thank you for coming by here, and thank you for working with our people from Ontario, as well as the Senator Lou, by the way, big election the other day. Now, he's a Democrat, but I talked to him. He sounds like a Republican to me, like hardcore Republican. But, you know, something we were talking about, not big into the political stripes myself. I don't care if you're from the red, blue, purple party, whatever. It's all about supporting the people of Ontario. And all the other officials here today, I want to thank you for coming. And I want to thank everyone at the Delphi Economic Forum and the Canada-Greece Chamber of Commerce for inviting me to speak today. And it's great to see so many familiar faces in the audience today, so many great business leaders and We are so fortunate as a province to have such a thriving Greek business community and great Greek Canadian business leaders working with us side by side to help attract investments and create jobs and build a stronger Ontario. Earlier this year, I had the pleasure of meeting the Prime Minister of Greece here in Toronto. We had a great discussion. We talked about so many different things, the large and thriving Greek community here in Ontario, which now stands at more than 150,000 people. And I just want to thank the community for the support they've shown our family over the years, starting all the way back with my dad and then my brother Rob. Rob was like a rock star when we went down to the Danforth and any of the Greek parades that we went in. We talked about boosting tourism with the Prime Minister, investments and trade between the two jurisdictions. And we both recognize the important role that Ontario's Greek community plays in building and strengthening our economic and cultural ties. In 2023, total trade between Ontario and Greece was valued at $247 million. And here in Ontario, our government is hard at work to create the conditions and the environment to attract more international investments and more international trade. Since coming into office in 2013, we've cut red tape, saving the people and businesses $1.2 billion and over 1.5 million hours in time each and every year. And Lou, you see red tape down there as well. That just slows down business. So we went in there and made sure that we're making it easier for companies to invest and they don't have to fill out 3 feet of paperwork. We made energy more affordable by reducing electricity rates for small, medium, and large-sized businesses by 15 to 17%. And folks, when it comes to energy, we're energy leaders, nuclear energy leaders around the world. We have something that very few jurisdictions have. We have something called a willing host. A willing host that we're building 4 SMRs out by Darlington, and we're refurbishing the Darlington plant. We have an order right now from Poland of about $100 billion. And just to explain what the SMRs are, the small modular reactors, you can make them any size, but we're making them roughly the size of a Walmart. And that can power a town of about 400,000 people. And we're leading the world with the small modular reactors. We're refurbishing Pickering, and Bruce Power is the largest nuclear facility in the entire world. It's clean, green energy. And these are some of the tools that we use when we trade with a very close ally is the United States. And when Lou calls me up in a little while and says, we're running out of energy, can you send us some? We're going to be able to send them tons of energy. Matter of fact, our grid right now, it can stretch all the way down to Florida. Think of that. So if the governor in Florida calls up and they need energy, as we build out the nuclear fleet and other forms of energy, no matter if it's wind or solar or biomass, we'll have all forms of it. But who better to trade with and send the power down there when they need it? And we're keeping taxes and fees low. In fact, our government has never raised a tax on people or businesses in 6.5 years. We've actually lowered taxes. Overall, we've reduced the cost of doing business in Ontario by $8 billion each and every single year. And that's money that goes back into businesses so they can invest into their people, into the infrastructure and technology, and make sure the company grows with innovation. And I always tell the story, when we first took office, the budget was $150 billion. I described it as a business person, I described it as a bankrupt company. So we were at $150 billion, 300,000 jobs were chased out of our province. All we saw is taillights running to the south of the border. And now all we see are headlights coming back the other way. So it was $150 billion. We grew that by $64 billion of revenues to $214 billion. That's a $64 billion increase. And we're the only government that I can think of in recent memory that we didn't do it through taxation. We did it through growth. because there's over 860,000 more people working today than were working 6.5 years ago. Those are staggering numbers. There's over $70 billion of investment that we've seen over the last 4 years coming to Ontario. And of course, those folks are coming in, they're paying taxes. So my point is, we will never ever raise the tax. There's no reason to raise the tax. Government doesn't have an income problem, not just here, but around the world. They have a spending problem. They love to spend your money. We take the government. And you know, friends, these steps we're taking to attract investments and create jobs, it's working. The numbers speak for themselves. Since coming into office, and Ontario has added, as I mentioned earlier, about 860,000 new jobs to our economy. More are coming. Our target is going to be 1 million jobs. And we're attracting billions of dollars in global investment across all sectors. In life sciences,
opportunity to meet Premier Ford during the visit of the Prime Minister Mitsotakis, and at that time too we had a very interesting discussion. But I kept from his speech that government likes to spend your money, so this is something we are trying to avoid in Greece. So, thank you very much. Honorable Ambassador, Honorable Parliamentary Secretary Annie Kourtakis, Honorary Parliamentary Assistant Ms. Triadafilopoulos, probably she will return now, dignitaries, ladies and gentlemen. As you can imagine, I'm delighted to be here again for the third year. This is the third event, third Toronto Economic Forum that is happening here in Toronto, in a city I love, in a province I love, Ontario, and of course in a country I love, Canada. And this is where the heart of the Greek-Canadian diaspora beats, a heart that I would say is beats very vividly and very strongly. First of all, I would like again to congratulate Mr. Tsomokos for organizing this significant event. I think this event, as we will probably hear from Mr. Nanos later on, has improved the way Canadians see Greece. And this is very important. And I think because here today, a lot of Greek businessmen happen to be here, and listening to the Premier Ford, I think this helps this Greek businessman to see Ontario also a place to invest. So here, Ontario, 150,000 Greek Canadian, Ms. Triadafilopoulos, okay. We have a thriving population of 150,000 Greek Canadians, and out of the total of 300,000 Canadians of Greek origin in Canada. And of course, we all share a rich history of strong relations, firmly rooted in our shared values of democracy, human rights, and the rule of law. So both our countries believe in building resilience to manage global challenges resulting from the global crisis of climate change, biodiversity loss, and pollution. Both our countries also have stood in the same side of history. The Canada-EU Comprehensive Economic and Trade Agreement, CETA, has led to benefits since its provisional application began back in 2017. And this has resulted in the trade between Canada and Greece to have grown by more than 80%. The potential, of course, for further growth, because I cannot see that 1 billion euro is a trade sufficient for a country like Canada and Greece. So I believe that there is a potential for further growth in trade and investment between our countries. And of course, this includes the collaboration in our science and research communities. Canadian companies are very significant foreign investors in Greece. Companies like Eldorado Gold, Fairfax Holdings, PSP, CAE, Brookfield Capital Partner, Wilbur Ross, Bombardier, and others trust our growth potential. We look forward to more investments from Canada in strategic sectors of our economy, such as tourism, energy, information and telecommunication technologies, industry, health, environmental management, logistics, and of course, real estate. Canada and the European Union recently also concluded a negotiation towards Canada association in the EU's flagship research and innovation program that is called Horizon Europe. This program will strengthen our cooperation and explore new opportunities to work together in emerging technologies such as AI, artificial intelligence. Ladies and gentlemen, during the 5.5 years of Mitsotakis government, Greece is achieving long-term high growth by implementing a strategy based on 6 pillars. These pillars start with fiscal prudence. We have learned from our past that deficits are a destabilizing factor of the economy, especially now that with a new fiscal structural plan that applies throughout all 28 European member states. We see that 8 member states have entered what is called the excessive debt procedure, which is a step before enhanced surveillance. And of course, Greece will never go into that road. We continue a reform agenda. This government from the beginning introduced reforms that changed the public governance. We continue to build a robust banking system. As we learned from our dramatic experience of the previous decades, we are keen to maintain a stable banking system. It's very important for us. We are changing our productive model. We're redirecting our productive model, and that has resulted in the increase of the exports to GDP to 50%. And this actually puts us almost at the top of the European countries. I think Portugal is ahead of us, but we still have a long way to go. We believe in manufacturing, and we believe soon we'll reach 60% of exports to GDP. We believe that skilling, upskilling, reskilling our workforce through certification educational programs is very important. We have gone a financial crisis. Many of our people in the workforce have stayed behind in skilling, especially with the new technologies. And of course, we enhance competitiveness and we are boosting investments. Greece is not the same country like it was back in 2019. We've changed the business environment. We've made Greece an attractive country to invest. And that's why Financial Times have characterized us as a country of the year back in 2023. But Greece also holds the top positions in the European Union in absorbing structural funds, as the Recovery and Resilience Fund. It's the fund that was created after COVID-19, and the new partnership agreement 21-27. So in total, we are directing into the economy approximately 95 billion euros, which come from the RRF, 36 billion come from the Recovery and Resilience Fund, 26 billion come from the Partnership Agreement, 19 billion come from the Common Agricultural Pact, and 14 billion come from the National Investment Fund. So we are boosting our economy, we are supporting our SMEs, and we are creating a better environment for businesses to flourish. Ladies and gentlemen, the Greek future is bright. Greece has changed pace and now looks forward with confidence and optimism. As a country, we'll stay the path of economic growth and stability, but having always our focus and priority towards the solidarity of the weaker members of our society. And we will continue to be the positive news of Europe and of the world. We continue with passion and a renewed sense of purpose, and we all work together for the realization of a common vision for a creative and productive Greece. It is a Greece that makes all of us proud wherever we live. Για μια Ελλάδα δυνατή, υπερήφανη και δημιουργική, I truly wish success in today's forum. Thank you for your attention.
Mr. Papadopoulos, we thank you very much. I think everybody knows in Greece and abroad the instrumental role you have played these last 5 years for the stabilization of the Greek economy. We thank you. This was appreciated by the Greek people. You are now an elected member of the Greek Parliament, and we thank you very much for all this great support to this event. We have not finished with Mr. Papadopoulos. He's going to have an excellent discussion at 4 o'clock with Minister of Trade and Development, Madame Ink, if I pronounce well your name, who was actually recently in Athens, am I right? And you have had discussions, so you're going to have another dialogue with her. So with this, I would like to invite Robert Peck, our ambassador, to chair the first discussion. So Robert, please.
Ambassador Dimakis and Parliamentary Secretary Petrakis, thank you very much for joining us here this morning. Ambassador Dimakis, you'll be celebrating, if I'm not mistaken, your first anniversary as ambassador shortly. It's been a busy year for you. I'll get to my first question in a moment, but first of all, I'd like to bring greetings from Canada's ambassador to the Hellenic Republic, Karine Aslan. Karine would very much like to be with us today, but she, as High Commissioner of Canada to Cyprus, is representing a high-level delegation marking the 60th anniversary of the arrival of the first Canadian peacekeepers in 1964. So she sends her best wishes and hopes to be with us at a future forum. So getting back to the agenda for this morning, Ambassador, the visit of Prime Minister Mitsotakis was an historic one, the first in over 4 decades, a very long time and much anticipated. Perhaps I could ask you to talk a little bit about how you see Greek-Canada relations in the aftermath of this very, very important visit.
Thank you, Robert. Indeed, before going into that, to the visit of the Prime Minister, which was indeed historic, I just want to outline a little bit our bilateral relations with Canada. We were lucky today to have Premier Ford. He said a lot of things about his meeting with Prime Minister Mitsotakis. But Greece and Canada has been standing together on the right side of history all along. We fought together many wars. We are like-minded in many world challenges, like the war in Ukraine, Middle East, climate change, and other challenges as well. And our relation is characterized by mutual respect, friendship, and shared values. Now, having said that, indeed, the visit of Prime Minister Kyriakos Mitsotakis gave another level to our bilateral relations. New opportunities occurred and continue to occur. And we heard Premier Ford, what he said. There are very many possibilities, and hopefully we're going to see him sometime in Greece to talk about these possibilities as well. So, economy, culture, technology, science, education, they're fields that we can develop better our relations. Of course, the visit of Prime Minister Mitsotakis, the big highlight of that visit was the order of 7 Canadairs. Now, I am in the very lucky position to tell you that I was yesterday, 2 days ago, in Alberta. So I visited the site of the Havilland. I saw the first Greek plane, GP1 is called, Greek plane 1, being built. So this is the materialization of this agreement, signed during the visit of Prime Minister Mitsotakis. So it is wonderful what is happening. And of course, being in Alberta, I also attended a very important event by Mechelen, inaugurating an office there. And I should underline to you all that Mechelen company is investing more than 2.2 billion Canadian dollars to North America, to Canada. It's the biggest investment in Canada by a local or a foreign investor. And that's in solar power. That's huge. Think of that. That's huge. And this also shows the possibilities to invest here in Canada and the possibilities that exist to strengthen our bilateral relations. I also would like, of course, to refer to our relations that are ruled through European Union. And a big agreement, we heard about Horizon, which is very, very important. A big also agreement that sets the rules and regulations for our economic relations is CETA. And CETA is a very important agreement. We have seen a lot of development after the signature of CETA. We know that there are some outstanding issues still, but I'm quite convinced that with goodwill and common work, hard work, we're going to find ways to overcome these issues. I stay to this at the moment, and then we can continue later. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. Parliamentary Secretary Koutakis, Annie, if I may. The Ambassador spoke about the Mitsotakis visit, and I know that you were a passionate advocate for that visit, as were many of your colleagues, because it had been far too long since a Greek Prime Minister did to Canada. From your own perspective, can you talk a little bit about the impact of that visit from the perspective of the government, and what you think that visit could lead to in terms of deepening and broadening Canada-Greece relations?
Thank you, Bob. I'm delighted to be here with everybody again this year. This is the third year that Mr. Tomokos and his team and Minister Papatanasi with THI have brought to Toronto, and I'm very proud to be part of this success story. Yes, indeed, Canada and Greece relations have never been better or stronger for a history that started more than 80 years ago. I was one of these people, together with many colleagues, as you mentioned, Bob, saying to our Prime Minister and our government that it's time. It's more than 4 decades, and it's absolutely time to see how both Greek business people can take opportunities here in Canada, but also how Canadian Greek enterprises can benefit and go and make great investments in Greece, as we've seen over the last little while. I was one of the first, if not the first people in our caucus that received the text from Minister Joly, because every time I would see Prime Minister Trudeau or Minister Joly, I'd say it's time, and then I received this text saying Annie c'est fait, which means it's done, and I know exactly what she meant. So, being very enthusiastic as a person by nature, I went, yes, we got it done. So check, that's done. The other thing that I think predated the visit of Prime Minister Mitsotakis to Canada was all the bilateral visits that we had from various ministers and our own minister visiting. So since Prime Minister Mitsotakis' visit to Canada, we saw Minister Joly visit both Greece and Cyprus. We saw Minister Ng, which I was fortunate enough to be part of that visit, where we met with Minister Papatanasi and other government officials to talk about our bilateral agreements, and then more specifically on CETA. I have it on good authority saying that it's progressing very nicely after many years of slow progress. So, all to say that it pays to have elected people in the Canadian government and wherever Greeks live.
I'm very honored to be here this morning. I'm not of Greek heritage. I'm actually of Mexican heritage, but our culture in Mexico also values very much, keeping our culture alive, keeping our values, and even if we're not in our country, we feel very proud of who we are. So I value very much being here with the Greek community in Toronto. And thank you very much to the Toronto Economic Forum for the invitation. I think this is an event that is very, very interesting, and I'm also honored to be given the opportunity to deliver this keynote address on behalf of Metland. So without further ado, Your Excellency, Ambassador, it's a pleasure to see you again. We were very honored to have you in Calgary 2 days ago in the opening of our North America hub. And Honorable Minister Papathanasis, Honorable Ministers, dignitaries, and other distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, Kalimera, good morning. It's truly, thank you. It's truly a privilege to be here today at the Toronto Economic Forum in this important event that has become a staple of dialogue and collaboration in the Greek, Canadian, and international community. Your presence speaks to the values we all share, a commitment to innovation, resilience, and the pursuit of a sustainable future. Together, these values have fueled Metland's journey from its modest beginnings as a family business in Greece over a century ago to becoming a leading global player in energy and metallurgy. Today, we operate in over 40 countries with more than 6,500 dedicated team members driving our success forward. Before we dive into our exciting future, let's pause to look back. Our journey to this point has been filled with challenges and achievements shaped by our core belief in the power of progress and partnership.
And, first of all, Simeon, thank you very much for having us here today. It's remarkable what you're doing, and I know that it's not easy starting this journey of putting us together and bringing our countries together and our stakeholders together. And we are great fond of you, as you probably know. So we're following this guy all over. But he's also have been very helpful. So thank you very much. Thank you. You've heard a little bit about us, and thank you very much, Luis, for giving this presentation. We're very happy that we're here. Canada has been an excellent experience for us until now. Both federal government and the government of Alberta has really stayed very close in helping us putting together this 2.2 billion euros investment here. We are very much away from home, as you understand, home being Greece. On the other hand, we do feel at home here in Canada for some reason, and I felt the same in Calgary a few days ago. Of course, we have Her Excellency with us, Katerina Dimaki, and she's by our side, and thank you very much, Ms. Dimaki. But the only thing I want to share is that it's wonderful. We are here to stay. We feel that this country has great opportunities for the clean energy solutions and for the energy transition in general. You have done quite a remarkable job until now, but we are also good in pinpointing specific projects that will get us forward to the energy transition. Anything that any question you might have, Luis Laguna is our managing director here for North America, and eventually we are looking into going to other places in Canada. We are already talking with some companies here in Ontario. So I just want to say a big thank you.
Dan is a man of many talents. I think he's known best as an expert in corporate communications, public policy, community engagement, crisis and reputational management, but also a very established entrepreneur, having been a majority owner and the driving force between building Argyle Communications into Canada's largest communication and reputation advisory firm. And earlier in his career, Some 20 years ago, Dan and I worked together in the office of our foreign minister, and since then he's obviously been extremely successful and gone on to be a leader in both private and not-for-profit roles. So Dan, it's an honor to have you here. It's the first time that a president and CEO of the Ontario Chamber has come to the Toronto Forum, and we certainly hope it won't be the last. Dan Tisch.
Thank you so much, Bob, for that very generous introduction. Very special for me to be here with so many friends and look forward to making new friends over the course of our time together. So I've been invited here to speak to you about Ontario's competitive advantage in the global economy. And I could give you a presentation filled with all sorts of facts and powerful economic data. But here's the problem. I have a sense that Effie insisted the Premier go before me and do exactly that. So let me guess, I wasn't here for his presentation, but did he tell you about low taxes? Okay. Did he tell you about building lots of things?
Yes.
Okay. Did he say that in Ontario we have more X, Y, and Z than the whole country put together, or the whole North America put together?
Yes.
Okay. So you see, I didn't see the speech, I didn't read the speech, but I know the story. Right? And it's a great story. And so I'm just going to give you 60 seconds maybe of, a few data points that are worth remembering and thinking about for investors, right? Obviously, Ontario is located at the heart of North America. Home to 16 million people who speak 200 different languages. How Toronto is the fourth largest city in North America after Mexico City, New York, and Los Angeles. 53% of us, including me, were born outside this country. We have 180 different languages and dialects spoken right here in Toronto. We also have 180 international destinations that we can reach by air. 143 million consumers within a day's drive. 40% of Canada's economy in Ontario. A North American hub for the industries of the future, from EV manufacturing to life sciences. The largest tech cluster outside Silicon Valley, and home to more than 1,900 life sciences companies. So, I've got another 19 minutes to go. And as someone who's built his career, as Bob said, in communications, I've learned that while data for investors may help identify an opportunity, it's actually people and relationships and stories that really matter, right? That help turn the data into opportunities for action and into opportunities for success. Although Nick Nanos looked very unhappy when I said I wasn't going to do enough about data here. And in fact, I chose to invest my time here today, number one, because of course, to the Ontario Chamber of Commerce, the relationship with Greece is very important and very exciting, and we see lots of opportunity there.
Also, the legal assistant to the Minister of International Trade, Job Creation, and Trade. And before that, she was a counsellor at the Passos Law. So she combines law and business. With Nico Stavros, who is a director for the investment promotion, energy, services, environment. For Greece. Is the state agency for promoting Greek exports and investment and production in Greece. Is Antigoni Veropoulou, who since 2020, I think, is the CEO of the Hellenic Bank for Hellenic Development Bank for Investments. She has worked before that in other financial institutions that preceded the bank. She's got a lot of experience with venture capital, project financing, and she will talk us about the economy later. And Mr. Sven List, who's been with Economic Development Canada. So Mr. Sven List has been with Economic Development Canada since the year 2000 in various posts, climbing the ladder of the organization. And since April 2024, he's the Senior Vice President for Canada Corporate Business. Thank you. So let's start with UFE. We heard Premier Ford earlier talk us about his economic policy, how he supports Ontario for the past 6-7 years. Can you comment a bit more about why Ontario is the economic powerhouse of Canada and how this can foster international partnerships?
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dionysios. And before I get into some of the substance of my remarks, I also would very much like to thank the Delphi Economic Forum and the Hellenic Initiative Canada for working and planning this third annual forum here. I'd also like to recognize the hand of Minister Nikos Papathanasis, who knows and understands Ontario very well and has been instrumental in making sure that our forum comes to Toronto each and every year. Now, I have to tell you, having heard both Premier Ford and our friend Dan Tish speak about Ontario and what the competitive advantage is of our province, I'm not sure I need to say very much at all today, but I will just highlight a few points. I think it's important to be able to talk about the strategic advantages we have, not just in Canada, but also the fact that Ontario truly is a gateway into the North American market, and you heard Dan touch on that. But let me set the table in terms of what we as a government inherited in 2018 when we were first elected. It's important for you to understand that context, to be able to also understand just how far we've come. So when we were first elected 6 years ago, Ontario's reputation had been tarnished by years of anti-business policies by the previous government. The cost of doing business was very high. Business was mired in red tape and regulations. 300,000 manufacturing jobs had fled the province to the United States and to Mexico. And Ontario had just become a very, very expensive and high-risk place to operate. So in that context, what did we do? Radical change was needed, and that's in fact what happened with our government. Our objective was to turn Ontario's trajectory around and restore the province as a business-friendly and competitive destination for investment. The Premier touched on it as well this morning, and so one of the fundamental things that we did was reduce the cost of doing business by $8 billion each and every year, and we continue to do that. We cut burdensome regulations and red tape with annual savings to business of over $1 billion. We introduced 11 red tape reduction bills and reduced 500 pieces of red tape. We reduced energy costs for medium-sized and large industrial and commercial employers, saving 15 to 17% on electricity bills. And more importantly, as the Premier said today, in the last 6 years, we've raised no new taxes, not on businesses and not on individuals and families. So the results kind of speak for themselves. 800,000 new jobs created since 2018. In fact, in 2023, we had more manufacturing jobs created in Ontario than all 50 United States combined. Once again, Ontario has become the economic engine of Canada, and we really signal to the world that Ontario is in fact open for business. Our goal was and continues to be to make life more affordable for families, individuals, and seniors, and of course, be able to create a business climate that is predictable and safe, where investors can achieve long-term growth and partnerships can flourish. Now, I will leave my remarks till there, and then we can talk later on about some of the specific sectors where I think there are more opportunities for Greece, Canada, and obviously Ontario business relationships.
Thank you very much. I think I will give the floor to Edigone Liberopoulou to give us her perspective on the Greek economy. We've gone through a deep and long crisis. I think that in the past few years, a lot of positive things have been happening. But what is the take of the Hellenic Development Bank on the economy of Greece, and what is the role of the bank in all that?
Thank you for this invitation and for giving me the opportunity to present what is going on in Greece today especially the elected investments. First, I would like to share my experience in exciting countries. My first visit in Canada, of course, first visit in Toronto, and I'm thrilled in the Netherlands. I would not imagine that we have so common values as everybody said before. It feels like home. And thank you all for that. Now, as per the elected development bank investments, we are a state bank of organization, the fund of Greece, the sovereign fund of Greece. We manage public and European funds. Okay. So we manage public and European funds.
Free energy, specifically the case of nuclear. Of course, then government, in the case of geological surveys, and we don't expect that everybody knows what a geological survey of a government does, but what they do is that they are the first ones to go and screen for early geological data that then is offered for free and openly and transparently to the market, where investors and geologists or folks from the academic sector do further research and then develop business cases that eventually, many years, if not decades later, become operating mines. And yours truly from the folks in between, which is folks that mine, process, and then manufacture specialty materials. Thank you very much for joining us both. Let me start with you first, George. Canada has a legacy in nuclear power, both production and technology development. Can you tell us more about Canada's legacy in that?
Yes, so, can you hear me? It's not sure. Test this one. So again, so a lot of belief for the opportunity. Thank you very much. And I appreciate the question. Yes, Canada's had a long legacy with nuclear technology based on the CANDU legacy, CANDU supply chain, CANDU technology that sort of started off the process. And we've seen that really grow here in Canada, where a very substantive part of the supply chain and Canadian nuclear capability is really focused in Ontario, but also involves Saskatchewan and New Brunswick. And based on that foundation, and based on the recent successes that particularly Ontario Power Generation and Bruce Power have had in refurbishing the nuclear fleets in Ontario, which represent about $26 billion worth of investments in projects that are critical infrastructure that are on time and on budget, that has laid the foundation for a lot of international interest in terms of Canada, in terms of how those projects have proceeded on time, on budget, and laid the foundation for new technological evolutions and opportunities associated with small modular reactors. And that is increasingly becoming the interest in a lot of different new nuclear markets, is really understanding how small modular reactors could provide solutions for energy security, climate goals, on-grid, but also off-grid situations. And Canada is really very well placed, Ontario particularly is very well placed to lead that discussion and those opportunities.
George, thank you so much for that. And looking back to 5 years ago, at least when I got into this business of critical minerals, you looked at the Maslow pyramid, and I just made this up, but the Maslow pyramid of government priorities, and critical minerals were not up there. And 5 years later, we're close to competing for the same attention as AI and crypto, which I think says something. And the way that this ties is that these critical raw materials, say for example the case of rare earths and rare earth magnets that you make, they are energy-saving magnets, where you put 1 to 2 kilograms of a magnet of these critical raw materials in the motor of an electric vehicle, and you save 20 to 30% of the battery size of an electric vehicle, which is an order of magnitude more of weight while achieving the same range. Or the case of lithium, nickel, cobalt, manganese, and graphite for batteries. In the case of nuclear, it's uranium, and we'll get to that. But before, it all starts from stuff coming out of the ground. So tell us more about how this came to attention, things like the EU Critical Raw Materials Act and Greece's role in this.
Yeah, first of all, let me thank you for the kind invitation. It's great to be among you and visit this beautiful country, beautiful city. have a new target. The new target that we have is net zero. To achieve the net zero, we have to do a technological leap. We have to change the way we're living. We have to change the whole world. Right now, the microphone that I hold has 6 different minerals: gold, silver, nickel, copper, rare earth elements, and lithium. 4 of them are critical. Imagine now how much many minerals, quantities that we need to achieve net zero, to achieve the Green Deal, the transition of energy. This is what made the European Union to release a new act, the CRM Act, the Critical Raw Material Act, which will try to secure our supply chains and will increase our independence. The Critical Raw Material Act, the CRM Act, has 4 main targets. Target number 1, extraction. 10% of the overall European Union consumption of critical raw materials has to be achieved inside the boundaries of the European Union. Second, processing. 40% of the annual consumption of European Union critical raw materials will happen inside the Union. Third, recycling. The government is getting on these things, and its pursuit of trying to be part of these critical supply chains is meaningful, it's serious, and it's consequential. In the case of gallium that was mentioned earlier, there's no primary gallium production outside of China right now. And there's only 1 or 2 sites where there is primary germanium production outside of China. The reason is that gallium is a byproduct from bauxite to alumina conversion. It comes out of the Bayer liquor for all the chemistry enthusiasts. And in the case of germanium, it's again a byproduct of zinc, which is the case of Morlaus that was mentioned. And so Greece has this opportunity of capturing these byproduct benefits from mining, from recycling, from tailing ponds. In the case of Largo that was mentioned earlier, it pains me. Largo has been mostly unpopular over the years in Greece, but Largo 2 or 3 years ago during the energy crisis, when electricity prices were rocket high in Europe, was the last operating and only operating nickel smelter in Europe. And it pains me that nobody raised attention to that. There was no media coverage on it. We weren't congratulated in Europe for fighting to keep Largo open and complete the privatization process. So Greece, I think, has some successes, and we need to do our parts in recognizing them. So in the spirit of that, and what I hope, but that is nothing more than my personal agenda, will be a success of small modular nuclear reactors in Greece. George, what do you think is the acceptance of both the Greek governments and the Greek electorates? Is the Greek government's position essentially an extension of the electorates on nuclear energy right now?
Well, I don't want to pretend I know 100% where Greece is at, right? I've had some good conversations with the Greek government. I've had some very good conversations with the embassy. I've had very good conversations with the universities, some of the think tanks that we had discussion just earlier. So I've gotten a good flavor, and quite frankly, with the organizers here, wonderful opportunities to attend Delphi, Athens Energy Summit, where again, I had an opportunity to hear from Greek energy users, producers, the industry. So I got a flavor for where Greece is at. But I can't speak to where they are to accept or not. But I can speak to the Canadian story, and I can speak to where nuclear is going. Nuclear technologies are increasingly being put on the table as part of the menu to address energy security and climate goals. Full stop. You're seeing an evolution in Europe on taxonomy. You're seeing the creation of new nuclear markets in Eastern Europe.
And I'm honored to be here today as one of the newest members of the THI board. I am a founding member of EPTA Development Corp, a real estate development company based in BC, which I run alongside my 2 brothers, a family business. Like many of you here today, I also have a deep desire to help in any way I can to boost Greece's economic prosperity through an increased global acceptance of Greece's offerings. With that being said, I have the honor of introducing today George Milounas, CEO of the Allo Mill Group of Companies based in Greece. Over the course of 30 years, Alumil has taken a Hellenic-based industrial enterprise and enlarged it into a global footprint with over 3,000 employees deploying building envelope expertise and products worldwide. What makes this introduction particularly special for me is that both George and I come from family-owned businesses. While my brothers and I are rooted in real estate development, building projects in Canada, the UK, and the US, George and his family have focused on creating world-class aluminum products that shape to where I have my offices in downtown Vancouver. And as I drive to my office every day, it couldn't make me more proud to see the Alumil name, a Greek company, flashing in front of everyone's eyes as we drive through the downtown core. So congratulations for what you guys have accomplished so far. Perhaps we can get started by having you give the audience a little background on how the Milonas family became industrialists in the true sense of the word in Greece, because I know, as we talked before, your family was in the real estate business before.
Yes, exactly, but I would like to say before that, that was an answer to how much nuclear power we need. We try to eliminate the need for energy with our systems. So the family, yes, it was in the construction business, and back in the 60s in Greece, we started producing the metal. Now it's Metlin, at that time it was Pechinier. So everybody started using aluminium. Aluminium was a very nice solution for construction. My father liked the idea, so he said, let's produce it. And that's how we got in the business with the production of aluminium profiles in the beginning. Of course, that was very simple at that time. Now it's much more complicated and sophisticated because we are in this sector, but now, let's say what we do, we just improves people's lives. So aluminium, it's just a tool. I will explain.
That's great. Greece has obviously had its economic peaks and valleys, like every other country. If you look back, what was some of the challenges that you faced over the last 30 years in taking your company where it is today?
I mean, after the Lehman Brothers worldwide crisis, in Greece things went much worse because we were not expecting that. So we were a happy nation, spending too much without producing too much. So the government, the state was bankrupt, the banks was bankrupt, not, let's say, officially, that was the reality. And what was the result for the business? There was no banking system for financing the businesses. There was no construction. We are talking about 95% elimination of what was construction. The same problems was also in other areas where aluminium was very strong, like the Southeast Europe, the Balkan areas. And in 2015, as some of you probably remember, it was the capital control. So I couldn't get more than 20 euros from the bank, and I couldn't pay my suppliers. We buy aluminium from all over the world. It was a disaster, a very difficult situation, not only for Alumil, for everybody, but for Alumil as a multinational company. This affected not only what was happening in Greece, but affected what my company was doing in India, or what we were doing in Indonesia, or what we were doing in the US. So it was tough times.
So with that being the case, and we obviously saw that from afar, did you take that as an opportunity to expand your business outside of the Greek boundaries, more so?
I mean, this crisis in Greece, of course, triggered when you need to survive, then you do extreme things, okay? But before that, I'll tell you, for us, the expansion abroad was very easy. One, for two reasons. The one is funny. We were doing a lot of exports in the Arab world at that time. And Greece was the biggest supplier of aluminium for these Arab countries, Saudi Arabia, Yemen, all these, Qatar. Why? Because these guys was coming to Greece very often, for the bouzouki music. Yes, so we are taking them out in Athens, they are spending some time, and before they go, they put the orders. And that was not for me, for all the Greek aluminum producers. So that was the first initiative for action. The second one is, after 1991-92, that the countries, the ex-USSR countries or the East European countries opened their borders. You know, in all these countries they were Greeks. Because of our civil war with the communists, in all these countries they were communists. Yes, but brothers and sisters was in Greece, was there. So within 6 months, we created a network of salespeople in all these countries, from Uzbekistan to Russia to Kaliningrad, everywhere. And this helped us go very fast. And of course, to support all these, we had to make huge investments in the beginning in Greece. And then we started investing also in these countries that made our mill from that time being 90% export-oriented. When this calmed down, we started exporting more and more in Europe. And when the crisis hit, we said, okay, guys, now where? Where shall we go? We have to go to more advanced markets, where its predictability is a little bit better. So we invested huge amounts in R&D, creating new products, working a lot with institutes, research institutes, universities, not only in Greece, but also in UK and Italy. And we created a new generation of products that was okay. We start after the markets took over. Until 2013 in New York, there were not even scaffolding. Our people were there just discussing about projects. But we were organizing ourselves for the next generation of products, which now we supply the markets. And I think that necessity pushed to give all these products that we have now, and they are extremely high level.
Well, it's certainly impressive as we're watching the screen here and the various projects are rolling through. It's impressive to see the projects and the scale of projects that you're involved in, your company is involved in. And so what would you say as a Hellenic-based company has been your advantage going into these markets versus other competitors that are already in those markets?
I'll tell you why. First of all, Alumil is the world leader in sliding systems. Why? We are in Greece. Everybody has a party, everybody goes out. You have to find solutions. Now, if you go to Greece, you will see a lot of luxury hotels built underground. That means you make a whole house, and you have only a sliding door. You have to go from that in and out, and all the rest is underground. So, I mean, you need a lot of research to find solutions how to do that with the sizes, with the other technologies, with the locking systems, with a lot of things. And this research leads us to...
Also a director at Inside Canada, and I'm delighted to be here for the third year in a row. And say that both content-wise and participation-wise, this forum is only growing stronger and supporting Greek-Canadian relations. So I would like to invite, please, to join us for a most interesting discussion on fueling dreams in a world that's losing faith. Mr. Byron Nikolaidis, he's the founder and CEO of PeopleCert, an award-winning entrepreneur. He's been awarded Entrepreneur of the Year 2019 in the UK, also by the European Business Awards. Can you tell us a bit more about how the business skills that your company, your group of companies, I should say, is certifying people for can change people's lives?
Yes. The value of certification, of any certification, is not the value of the paper. In essence, people get certification in order to fulfill their dreams, for a better job, for a better career. So what we are doing as an organization is trying to help people to achieve their maximum. whatever they are capable of, not only the people, but organizations as well. That's why we say that we fuel the dream economy, because there are some papers around this. And people are dreaming of a better future. And what we see today, and this, what we're doing was before the election of yesterday, this generation finds things much more difficult than the previous generation. And even more difficult than 2 generations. They are angry. And they are dreaming. And certification is a way of fulfilling their dreams.
Can you tell us a bit more about what kind of certifications you're providing and what you find are the skills that people need for this challenging economy and workplace that we're facing?
We as PeopleCert, we have close to 800 certificates, but if we look at big categories, there are certification in business and IT, and certification on languages. We operate in 225 countries. People say, but there are not 225 countries in the world. Depends how you are looking at it, but if we put them on Google Maps, that's what we say, 125 countries. Essentially, we have 50,000 customers, organizations as customers. We work with 82% of Fortune 500. So if you write in a blank sheet of paper, 10 names, any names that come to your mind, 9 of them are our customers, from Apple and Microsoft and Google and American Airlines and Goldman Sachs and Morgan Stanley, to NASA, to CIA, to FBI, to American Armed Forces, Canadian Armed Forces, Royal Bank of Canada, just a few names. And we also work with 800 government organizations in 45 countries. Essentially, our certifications are changing lives. You see, to give an analogy with universities, we all know about the best university in the world, right? The top 10 universities, depending which ranking you look at, is Harvard, Stanford, Columbia, Yale, Princeton, Oxford, Cambridge, etc. And why those 10 are the best? Because if you graduate from your universities, A, you find a job with a higher salary, and 2, because you get immediately a job instead of waiting for a few months. There is equivalent of this list on the certifications, the top 10 globally. With the same criteria, if you can get those certifications, you can find immediately a job, and immediately you can get much better payment. 2 of our certifications make it the top 10 list. ITIL and Princeton, to give an analogy. And we also are in language certification, competing with the Cambridge IELTS and TOEFL. We are number 4 globally on language certification out of this.
Super, that's impressive. And I understand that you're operating in both, obviously, given the number of countries, developed and developing countries. I'm wondering what's the difference in what kind of skills people need to break through these social and economic barriers in either case. Can you give us some examples about that?
In our particular case, the certificates are professional certificates. And because the world is becoming a smaller place, there are no significant differences between developing and developed countries. Apart from the fact that developing countries, they cannot pay the price that the developed countries pay. But we can see the same certifications being in Africa, in the US, Middle East, Australia, New Zealand, South America, Europe.
So the pricing is different?
The pricing is different. We have 5.
But you have 5 million professionals already certified.
And we certify approximately 1 million people every year.
Find opportunities that exist for Greece. And what I'm going to do today is do a very quick walkthrough of the perceptions of the Greek brand that we've been tracking in Canada over the last decade. This is separate from another study that we do in the United States. But the thing is that what's interesting is that when we look at the things that are most likely to drive the Greek brand, and many times when we do these types of studies, everybody says everything is important. That Greece as a NATO ally is important, that it's an interesting place with history, that it's a place of natural beauty, the products. But when we run a statistical analysis on the things that are most likely to drive statistically the Greek reputation and brand, at the very top of the list you can see vertically, the more vertical an element is, the more likely it is to have a statistical relationship. So, Greeks as a welcoming people, Greece as a safe place to visit, having a vacation in Greece, those things are the most likely to drive a Greek brand. And if I might say, we have to think of those attributes as gateways. Gateways to discussion to diversify the reputation of Greece as a NATO ally and as a place to invest. A gateway that is really anchor elements that are actually quite positive that Canadians have in terms of the Greek brand and what they think of Greece, so that we can engage in the discussion on those other things in order to kind of diversify the reputation of brand to make it even stronger. But actually what's quite striking is that, when we look at the trend line, at least over the last decade, you can see at least, for the proportion of Canadians that would score the reputation or their favorability of Greece on a scale of 0 to 10 or 1 to 10, you can see that the positive score, the favorable score of 8, 9, or 10 out of 10 has actually hit a new high in terms of the trending. The other thing that's quite striking is you can see the change over the last decade in the favorability score. And you can, back in 2013, people were 3 times more likely to have an unfavorable rather than a favorable impression of Greece. And that, for all intents and purposes, has turned itself on its head. Now Canadians are 5 times more likely to have a favorable rather than an unfavorable impression of Greece as a country. That said, still about 1 out of every 5 are unsure. And these would be, if this was a political campaign, these would be the persuadables, the people that we want to engage, the people that we want to tell our story, the narrative related to Greece, in order for them to have a better understanding of the Greek brand. And even when you think of things like perceptions related to safety, and actually this is quite critical when it comes to tourism, right? And you can see a significant improvement over the last decade on this particular measure. And the improvement has basically cut across all demographics and regions in the country. Now this is our, if I was to put down a marker on where we have to work, and this is where the work of the Delphi Forum is actually quite critical. If I was to pick one thing that we really have to try to focus on, it is the whole concept of investment and connecting that to Greece. 1/3 of Canadians have no opinion on this, and you can see the proportion that have a favorable score is quite low. And I think this is why I talked about things as gateway discussion points, but to use them as kind of ways to start a discussion on things like Greece as a NATO ally and Greece as a great place to invest. The good news is that, and I see Ambassador Dimakis is here, the good news is that it seems like every single year there's another great story about the economic relationship between Canada and Greece in terms of investments that Canadian companies are making in Greece and also investments that Greek companies are making in Canada. That said, the proportion of Canadians that kind of look at Greece as a NATO ally, when we look at the favorable versus unfavorable, it's quite a significant delta in a positive sense. But I would say that rounding out this discussion, especially in a world where there's uncertainty in the Middle East, in a world where there's uncertainty between Russia and Ukraine and between China and the United States, building that narrative that Greece is not only an emerging economic partner, not only is a place of beauty, a place for you to have a vacation, but to really put some meat on the bones in terms of Greece as a NATO ally, I think is a significant opportunity that's out there. And not a big surprise, Greek food products. The good news is that almost everybody, 19 of 20 Canadians have an opinion on this, and you can see that the positivity related to food products from Greece
is the one that is close to our heart, because it's about our diaspora.
And we have a very strong panel that combines government, NGOs, and business. I would like to call the members of the panel. Ms. Mayra Mirogianni, Secretary General for Greeks Abroad. I think she just stepped out for a minute. Ms. Mayra Mirogianni, please.
That was outside, sorry.
Mr. Athanasios Valervas, Secretary General of Interior and Organization, Ministry of Interior, Hellenic Republic. Mr. John Sotos, Co-President, the Hellenic Initiative Canada. Mr. Andy Zemenidis, Executive Director, Hellenic American Leadership Council. And Ms. Aphrodite Xili, Executive Director, Deon Policy Institute. We are, what we're going to do is, taking into consideration the issues that concern the diaspora, we're going to start by exploring those issues, and then we will see what the motherland is thinking about those issues, what they have been doing so far, and what they plan to do. I would like to start actually with someone from the Greek diaspora, Mr. John Sotos, to tell us about, first of all, the issues that concern the diaspora today.
Great, thank you, Constantine. Basically, as far as I'm aware, the diaspora has two broadly defined issues. One is probably the easier to deal with, and that is addressing the problems that the diaspora is facing whenever it needs to interact with the Greek state for a whole host of reasons, be it passports, be it relocating to Greece, live and work there, or invest in Greece, those types of issues. And the problem is that there are huge delays and there's huge inefficiency in terms of accessing whatever is required in order to interact with the Greek state. And so I'd like to start there. What basically is the Greek state doing, if thinking of doing anything, to staff the consulates better so that they can deliver proper services to the diaspora community? And secondly, what, if anything, is it doing to digitize the delivery of those services so that they can be much more efficient? Canada is a very huge country, and the consulate in Toronto, for example, serves an area that's probably 10 times the size of the Greek mainland. People can't travel, and air travel actually isn't easily available from a lot of these places. So we need to be able to obtain those services a hell of a lot more efficiently than we do now.
So one point that we have to discuss is services. Okay,
yes.
Services towards the diaspora by the Greek state.
Yes.
Okay, Mr. Zemenidis, you're a member of the diaspora as well.
I'll withhold judgment on that label for now. And on services, I actually want to point out these two Secretary Generals especially, and this government has done a lot on the service front. Now, it has to be institutionalized, but I'll tell you,
I don't think there has ever been an effort like we've seen. We know, and even though there has to be a lot more infrastructure behind it, we know, and I especially Secretary General Balev was, the citizenship process, we're hitting record numbers. The fact, the Secretary General yesterday, they did the plan, the strategic plan for the diaspora. I have some thoughts on the specific, but the fact that the effort is happening, again, this is unprecedented. But where I want to go is I think there is a deeper issue, a more fundamental issue of who are we? Because if we just do services, that's easy. You're going to get people who may want a Greek passport because they want to leave the United States now, or there's another pandemic. And frankly, this question, I've only seen it, and I give credit to Alexis and Tom and Simeon, Gati Merini and Delphi's Hellas and Diaspora. I have not seen yet that philosophical attempt to say who we are and what model. That the first session was when they invited the former Phil-Hellenic congressman and now CEO of the American Jewish Community to Greece, what was it, 2 Decembers ago, to discuss how do we, not only for political reasons, but how do we as a diaspora promote the AGC's the motto is global Jewish diplomacy. How do we do that? We've done sessions last year at Delphi. I'm sure we're going to do with the Secretary General at Delphi in DC. But who are we? Because for decades, everybody comes in here and talks about the diaspora as if there's one diaspora. I would argue that there's at least 5 in the United States. And if we are here as global Hellenism, and if the Greek state is going to come out with a single policy, we're going to be Italians. Lou may not care because it comes from a state run by the Italians. But the Italians were very strong in the United States. The connection between the Italian Americans and Italy, you should study that because that's not where Greece wants to be with its diaspora, but that is the direction we're headed right now.
Ms. Krivi, you run an organization that consists of children of the brain drain of the Greek diaspora, of Greeks, Americans, and so forth, and you have been dealing with issues that concern, in general, the rapport with the motherland, and from what I know, you have also provided a consultancy and ideas to the Greek government in order to implement measures. Can you please give us your opinion and what are the pluses and minuses that you see?
Okay, that's a very big question. I think firstly, for those of you who saw yesterday, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs announced the National Diaspora Strategy. This hasn't happened for 20 years. So it's something that we need to celebrate. Secondly, we have Mr. Balerbas here. I've been abroad for 15 years. I've voted twice the past 2 years. So this is also a major milestone. But I think it's important for us to just take a step back and contextualize where we are as a country and why this matters. The financial crisis that we experienced was the largest financial crisis that has ever happened during peace times. It was deeper and longer than the Great Depression. And for all of us who were abroad during that time, it was horrible to experience the amount of hatred that was coming towards us and the way we were perceived as, the black sheep of Europe. So this brain drain generation, yes, which I'm a part of, 500,000 people who left, had to experience all of this negativity. And I think now we are in a part where the narrative has shifted. There's a lot more positive narrative coming out of the country, and this is, they partner that with the fact that there's a lot of economic growth. There's a positive story, and I think this has brought a lot of hope to the diaspora who want to contribute. And this is the exact thing that we are tapping into. We're tapping into all of these brains that have left and or did leave during the crisis or have existed abroad for so long. And now couple that with the hope that we can do something to make the country better. And we did submit many recommendations for the National Diaspora Strategy, and we're very thankful that a lot of them were implemented. I think in terms of priorities, it's something just to put on your agenda. I think something that the Greek diaspora really cares about is the Greek language and maintaining it, particularly in the US, as well as promoting Greek culture. These are also things that we all really care about, and of course we would love to be able to vote in the national elections with the postal vote, so I'm just going to bring this to the attention of Mr. Valeno, so I'm sure we will support that.
Well, thank you. Ms. Miller again.
So I'm starting by saying that Aphrodite, I think, should work for the government. Let's start with that. I think she has answered some of our questions. I would like to say that we understand that we have a lot of issues regarding our procedures and our services. We need to remember that we come from after the crisis. We're trying to reorganize the internal and our external procedures. I'm not sure that this is okay. Okay. No, okay, so we're trying to do a lot of things. We realize that we need to do more. Yesterday, the Prime Minister, we had a chance, as you said previously, to present the strategic plan for Greeks abroad for 2024-2027 in the presence of the Prime Minister and the Minister of Foreign Affairs. And actually, it's the first plan that has been made. We think it's a very good start. We don't think that it's the end. This means that it's a dynamic plan. We need to have more of your opinions, and we understand that we need to have much more interaction. And this takes some time, but I think that we're trying a lot. This government has tried a lot in this direction and has tried to reconnect as much as possible. And also, the Prime Minister also yesterday said that we would like to extend the vote and how important the vote was for us. And it's something that this government was so anxious to do and was so willing to do. It was not easy, as you know. We had, the other parties. We didn't have, the collaboration that we expected to have. But on a positive note, I think that we have now some goals appointed, so we know where we're heading. Regarding the services, we're trying to use the technology. We have the my consulate. This is the instrument that you can have some services from a distance, so Greeks abroad don't have to travel if they're far away from the consulate. But we need to do more. We understand that. And as Prime Minister said yesterday, we understand that sometimes the fact that the interaction of the people with the consulates is difficult. This is something that we have in our mind that is something difficult. This is something that we need to change. We have planned to have more, to hire more people in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in order to have more people in the consulates, because we have people in the consulates that they are working a lot and they have to cover a lot of people, so it's not that easy. This is a start, and also the start is to see our procedures and also to use the technology that we can have.
I will, if I may be permitted, Mr. Chair, I will concur with the fact that the consular people are working extremely hard and they're overstretched. That's not the issue. The issue is lack of available resources. And I know 10 years ago, 12 years ago, the local consulate has something like 15, 16 staff, and it now has maybe 6 or 7. Still the volume of work has not decreased, has actually increased in complexity. So technology should obviously have help. But in terms of what the state is doing, and the introduction of, and we'll talk about it a little bit later, but the introduction of the new program that was announced yesterday by your ministry, it's only in Greek. And some thought should be given to...
We're actually translating it right now, but we're right. Sorry. You're right.
I'm addressing generally. A lot of people are second, third generation.
It's fresh off the press, it just came out of the oven, so no time to get it, just was 24 hours
It's
ago.
not, to be honest, this is something, we had a discussion that was hosted by Gatti Meridi, and this is, of course, the Secretary General inherited it, so this could be directed to the minister and to the deputy minister and to the previous Secretary General, who I do think dropped the ball. Right? I don't even know how you could have possibly had public comment if John couldn't read it. And beyond that, I mean, listen, we're all family here, we're trying to come up with a strategy. I did a quick survey of all the consul, the generals, and the ambassador in the United States. They had zero input on this plan. The plan starts with talking about a Saed. I said this, I'll say it again. If I hear Saed again, I'll have an aneurysm in front of all of you. Saed was an abysmal failure. Abysmal failure. I think this is a time this government and this Greece has been paradigm shifting. Let's paradigm shift again. And that's it. I'm glad to hear there was ideas from Aphrodite, who I trust, and but that was not brought all the way out. Let's study this issue. I'm glad it's dynamic, but what should not be dynamic is let's get rid of old structures. There were members of the Hellenic Parliament in Washington, D.C., and they asked Greek Americans, why don't you take direction from us? I mean, this is one thing, we've noticed this, we've said this to the minister and to the previous Secretary General. The plan has a provision in there that encourages the diaspora to break American law. It says that the ministry should coordinate our political activities. Okay, then that means you don't want an independent diaspora, you want foreign agents. You might as well hire lobbyists if you have foreign agents. We have to have this honest conversation. There is the diaspora, this plan, my problem with the plan is you read it and you see, you get the message that the diaspora is to be managed, not enabled. Let's flip that equation. I think the bones are there and I know the willingness is there, but in that plan, it's not there.
Very good point, Sandy. I take, the paradigm shift and and of course, I'm sure the secretary would like to answer your question, your points.
This is just to help the discussion. Perhaps the deputy can speak about, in very high-level terms, what this plan is about, because a few of us have either seen or heard of it, but most people here don't even know what we're talking about. So maybe you could describe at a high level what it is that your ministry has come up with just yesterday, and then you can answer the question.
Yes, I will do that, but I need firstly answer to Ed, because I think he had some very strong comments that I cannot relate to. And, we know each other, but okay, anyway, I cannot say that we dropped the ball. What I say, I think, and I would like for you to agree is that we have made an effort, and we have made an effort after a lot of years. Of course, I understand it was in Greek. It should have been in English as well. It should have been in other languages as well. And it was the first step after a lot of time that that step has been done. So I understand that we must talk more, but it's a very good start. And the fact that the ministry and also the government wants to have a connected plan and has to have a strategic about Greeks abroad is something important. Maybe we have. Well, I don't think that we want people abroad to break the law, of course. But okay, if we have something that you consider that it should be this way, we can make it in another way. But we have to acknowledge the fact that we have started this plan after all this time. So to answer what is the goal, so is the main issue of the strategic plan is to reconnect it, to facilitate the connection of the Greeks abroad with the motherland. Of course, with the improvement of our services in the consulate, also with different strategies for the language learning. This year we have started the programs, the hospitality programs, that we are taking a lot of students from the school and also from the university. They are coming to Greece for 2 weeks, having also lessons in Greek, but also relating to the Greek culture. This is a program that could work, and this is something that is going to be elaborated because it started this year only for the culture and the Greek language, but also we're going to have these kind of programs for traditional dances or for different activities that connect people. They are interested in people. For example, we're going to have a seminar between the yacht club of Castellorzo with the yacht club of Perth, because they are a country, they are cities that they are, connected. These kind of things. We understand that we need to listen more to the people from the diaspora. What you said is totally right, that we must define what is diaspora. It's not one thing. We're different people with different needs, in different perspectives, in different educational levels, so we need to address everything and everybody. We have a special program for women, that they have decided to stay home, they want to be connected, or for women that they are working. We're going to have a platform that will connect not only the communities but also the people from different issues, the academia, the scientists, the lawyers. And this is only the start. We are having a special program for the youth. We're going to have the first Greek Youth Diaspora Symposium this November from young students from 16 countries and 4 continents. We are starting to have a plan. And what also I think is very important to do, and this is not something that
giving an explanation, and allow each person, I'm going to ask each person to take about a minute to explain the organization that you're from.
Should I start?
Yes, George, please.
All right, thank you. Thanks so much for this incredible invitation. I really appreciate it, the Economic Forum. It's a nice event. It's almost as nice, or even better here. I have to go closer. So, Demokritos is one of the largest public research centers of Greece, maybe the largest. It's located in Athens at Agia Paraskevi, and it's approximately 2,000 people who work there. So, what is Demokritos is doing that may be of interest to a forum such as this? We are one of the first public institutions in Greece that we are transforming in the sense that we can finally produce prosperity, create wealth for the Greek society, and not only by carrying out research programs that are funded by our government or by the European Union, but by directly attracting private investments and indeed international private investments to the center for developing intellectual property in very interesting areas. The reason we've been able to do that the last few years and really seeing some interesting and fruitful results is the fact that we have been able to embrace right from the start some very disruptive, emerging, I would say, technologies. There is a lot of work done at Demokritos right now on AI, and we are, along with the Office of the Prime Minister, the Ministry of the Digital Health, we will be able in a couple of weeks to publish the national strategy on AI, which the last draft I read was in English. Just to be
AI can very quickly translate to English in about a second.
Also, we are doing a lot of work on autonomy for digital manufacturing. This is attracting quite a lot of international interest from private investors. And lately, we've been taking very firm steps in what is coming up as the major disruption within the next 10 to 15 years, and this is quantum computing and quantum technologies. So we're playing strong into that. We are actually the first public organization in Greece, research organization in Greece, that we opened up our campus to startups. And right now, more than 60 deep tech startups are thriving at Demokritos, collaborating with us, creating value and wealth alongside the public researchers.
Thank you, George. Ian, perhaps give us an overview of what Mars is, and for the Greek delegation in the room, this is not, we're not referring to the planet yet.
I didn't come in for the planet for today. So my name is Ian Spence. I'm a senior manager of partnerships at Mars Discovery District. Mars Discovery District actually stands for Medical and Related Sciences. We were founded in the early 2000s. We celebrate our 25th anniversary next year. We are a self-mandated nonprofit and registered charity, and we are also North America's largest urban innovation hub. We're a 1.5 million square foot life sciences and climate research facility in downtown Toronto. You'll find us right by Queen's Park on the corner. And our work spans across how do we take science and turn it into commercial viability. There's always a contested issue, moving out of the research institutions and into the private practice. So look at Mars as being a public-private organization. We are funded in part by the Government of Ontario and the Government of Canada. We're also self-funded through different means and services for our fee-for-service work, international programs, etc. The really important piece that we wanted to look at is looking at how, when you look at a startup, what is the economic value? In Canada, we've recognized that challenge for quite a long time. And right now, Mars supports just over 1,200 companies in Canada across life sciences, climate technology, and all your funds.
Is the fact that we have the pride and honor to have Minister of Energy and Electrification of Ontario, Minister Lecce, with us today. You know, the minister and I go back about 7 or 8 years ago, and you really know who your friends are, especially in politics, when they don't only show up at celebrations, at festivals, at business opportunity summits like today, but they also show up when times are difficult, when times are bad. And I remember, and I really want to recognize when Minister Lecce, of course, MVP Triadopoulos, omnipresent at all Greek-Canadian affairs and more. But I really want to highlight the fact that when the Danforth sad day shooting was in July of 2018, Minister Lecce was there, and he was calling folks and asking how can he help personally, not just in the capacity of being a newly elected official at the time, only a few weeks in. And so I think that speaks volumes about who your friends are, not only in good times, but also in difficult times. Minister Lecce, we will have the opportunity to hear from him today about what Ontario is doing to deliver affordable energy while also increasing capacity and helping industry. You know, we spoke earlier about the need for baseload energy to attract industry and manufacturing. And so what the minister is doing in the effort that him and his government are leading in Ontario to do that. We are very fortunate on the timing. The minister is on a road show, not just in Ontario, but also in the US. He came back from it recently, speaking on Ontario's strategy to deliver an affordable energy future, and we look forward to hearing more about that. The final comment, and something that is also topical for Greece and the current developments.
And really for the ability to strengthen our democratic partnership in the province of Ontario with the people of Greece and your economy. Really an emerging time, and I will say, Senator, it's nice to see him today. I didn't expect to see so many Democrats come to Canada so soon after the election, but you are welcomed here anytime, Senator, as any of my Greek friends are today. But look, thank you to the Toronto Economic Forum. Thank you, of course, to Simeon, to John Vasilios. Thank you for the kind introduction. We go back many years. The Italian-Greek friendship has never been stronger. But I'm here really on behalf of the Premier, who I know addressed this esteemed group earlier. I'm here with some of my very hardworking colleagues in Ontario's Parliament, and I do want to recognize that the first is the Parliamentary Assistant in the Ministry of Energy, Rudy Cazzetto.
I want to introduce Effie Tranthophilopoulos, who is with us today and a strong leader, not just for innovation in the economy and for expanding trade with all nations, but most particularly as a proud daughter of Greece. And of course, Aris Babikian, member of provincial parliament, someone who has been critically involved in strengthening relations in Greece and Canada and frankly many nations, including India. So thank you to them for joining us today. And I want to just speak a bit about the vibrance and the pride we have in the Greek community. I mean, the diaspora of 130,000 people strong have made our country better, a more democratic, more free place to do business. And I speak about, in all fields of human endeavor, Greeks have, in our province and country, punched above their weight. You see it in government, you see it in business, and you especially see it in the energy expansion taking hold today. And I want to speak a bit about that. Because really the vision for Ontario is to build out a clean energy future where we already are among the cleanest energy grids on Earth. But our driver will not be ideology, it will be a pragmatic embrace of the market and of affordability. That is the central driving public policy priority of our government. It is to make sure the energy rates that attract investment, and even for our families and for our seniors, remains affordable. And so we have brought forth the Affordable Energy Act, which telegraphs with clear intention where we're going, laying out a vision for energy generation. Because what we're trying to avert in this province, a phenomenon that happens too often in the world, is short-sighted, disjointed, sort of decisions made on electoral cycles instead of decisions made on the economic needs of a country for 20 and 30 years. So we said we're going to do something different in this government. The Premier, who I know many of you would have heard earlier, spoke about reimagining how we do government and how do we do business in this province. And part of it was the requirement for a long-term integrated energy plan where all of our fuels, electricity, natural gas, work together, where we drive synergization between all those resources to provide affordable options, because we want to continue to attract investment. We also want to continue to provide affordable energy rates for Ontario families. And so, because of our results, we have, about a decade ago, we were the first jurisdiction in the continent's North America to entirely remove coal from our grid. This is now an undertaking that the government of Greece has initiated that will be done in the 2030s, and we recognize the leadership of the Greek government. This is an important step forward to reduce emissions. So we've done that. We've been doing that for many years. In 2023, 90% of our grid was non-emitting. And so this is an incredible testimony to the importance of clean energy for Ontario families. But we need to produce much more energy, 75% more energy between now and 2050. And this is not an insignificant challenge, but we see this as an opportunity because we have been thinking about tomorrow since the day we got elected in government in 2018. And what we need, we have to have an honest discussion about, is we need reliable base load power. I mean, obviously we support all forms of energy, but we need to have reliability on the grid, which is why in Ontario we've embraced nuclear energy for generations. It's why hydroelectric have been a part of our mix for generations. And we're going to be doing much more of both, with nuclear energy playing a critical role. Just to contextualize, colleagues, 50% of energy in Ontario is coming from non-emitting nuclear, 25% from renewable energy, 10% from natural gas, which we only use for peak purposes. So when we don't have enough of that baseload energy, when the wind is not windy enough and the sun is not shining enough, and there's a delta of energy, that's when we fire up natural gas to use roughly 10%. But the overwhelming majority is clean, not emitting, and obviously it's been an ability to attract investment to our province. And we will say to you that, we have really two paths before us as a province. And the purpose of why we came here today, in part because of the brilliant, relentless lobbying of Effie and Aris for us to show up today. But in addition to that, the truth is we came here because we have a message to demonstrate, to share with our Greek friends and with the world, that we are and we have a plan, a credible plan of building on time and on budget nuclear expansions and refurbishments, including small modular reactors. We take note of the Prime Minister's most recent remarks, incrementally embracing the potential of nuclear. And that in itself is something we want to celebrate in the province, because we really see that as the next phase of our non-emitting future if we seek to decarbonize our economy. So we've attracted $45 billion of investment in EVs because of, not in spite of, our clean, affordable energy. We've created more manufacturing jobs last year in Ontario than all 50 US states combined have done. we have created the conditions really where we are becoming this renaissance of economic growth, really fueled by nuclear energy, and we're proud of this success. We really see it as a net gain. But the truth is, we need to expand this world-class energy grid. We need to do more. And so I come today with a plan to do that. And in part, it's because we have initiated the first small modular reactor in the G7. We've sort of embraced the first mover's advantage. And we're building the first in the industrialized world, really like an hour and 20 minutes from here at the Darlington Nuclear Generating Station. We're going to build a fleet of 4 SMRs, small modular reactors, being built as I speak, on time and on budget. And like many countries who are building or who have concepts of small modular reactors, we're physically building it. It's going to be in service by the end of the decade, producing 300 megawatts of non-emitting clean power. That's 300,000 homes. And of course, one may not be enough for the Greek economy or for the Ontario economy, so we're building a fleet. They're stackable and scalable. And so we're really making this pitch to the world. And next week, Rudy and I will be in Poland, where we're going to help secure more agreements because the world is looking to Ontario as a clean energy superpower. And we're going to be helping in Poland, in the Czech Republic. We have agreements with Estonia, and we hope to secure more with other nations in Europe, and as we do in many parts of Canada and East Asia. And my point, colleagues, is just to say what I think we have learned as of late as observers of the world over the past few years with great levels of war and division is that we need to, as democracy, I speak to the people who founded democracy, we need to embrace democratic values when we trade and export and be more intentional. So we decouple dependence on these despotic regimes abroad who seek to undermine our way of life. I mean, it is so foolish to see nations financing the war machine of Vladimir Putin in Europe today. And so I know you have natural gas in Greece, we do too in Canada, the 5th largest holder of natural gas. My point is, we need to work together as democracies to decouple that dependence and be very clear-minded that we do not want to finance the Chinese or the Iranians or and I speak about the regimes, not the people, or of course the Kremlin, because we recognize, I think all of us as supporters of democracy, that we need to be much smarter about how we invest and how we work together. And Canada is a democratic friend, an embracer of democracy and human rights and rule of law. And that's why we're here today to say, let's work together, let's smarten up as a nation of friends and collaborate together. We also are leading large-scale nuclear expansion. We have the largest continental nuclear expansion in our history happening as we speak at Bruce Power, Western Ontario, if you will. And in that part of Ontario, you will see a massive undertaking to expand nuclear energy. Roughly 5,000 megawatts of additional power will be generated by what will be called Bruce C, the next iteration of power, non-emitting power. So we're excited about this. We're also excited that we're refurbishing Darlington. We're refurbishing Pickering. These are nuclear generating stations that have been a part of our history for 30 odd years. And we're going to extend the life of those assets for another 30 odd years. And so I speak about this because we understand the importance of non-emitting energy. We also have launched the largest competitive energy procurement in Canadian history. And we actually did this in the township of King. And there was a beautiful announcement and a reminder to myself that our collaboration is what's going to enable lower rates for Ontario families. And I was very fortunate to meet with the team at Medlin, who one of your pride and joys, they will be able to compete because we are an open market for your investment. So you can now compete in what will be the largest energy procurement in our history for 5,000 megawatts. And it's technology agnostic, meaning be it renewables or natural gas, which is pretty much all of their diversified business offerings. Any form of energy can deliver as long as you hit the timelines of building energy by 2034. So we are really reflecting on the strengths in our relationship. We are advancing the cause of democratic values. And I came here simply to express gratitude for our relationship, for our collaboration, for our hundreds of years of enduring values. And I just want to say thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to make this pitch to you. Thank you for your interest in our country. And Minister, as a proud alumnus of the University of Toronto, may I say, you are welcomed here anytime, and it was an honor to meet with you. So thank you all. I appreciate you.
it's working. Okay. It's a pleasure to have you here, Minister. I understand you were recently in Greece.
I was.
Meeting
Beautiful
with
Athens.
Mr. Papathanasis too, and during the course of our discussions today, we've heard about some quite encouraging statements about the progress being made on bilateral relations and bilateral economic relations, that is. Can you tell us a little bit more about where we stand right now?
Indeed, indeed. Well, first of all, I'm so thrilled to be here with my good friend, Mr. Papathanasis. The last time we were together, we were in Athens, and I think he brought the weather because it was very hot in Athens, and there's no snow here, and it's pretty warm. So not only his warm heart, but really the warm weather. So very, very good to see you here. And I've got a couple of my Member of Parliament colleagues here in Julie de Brusen and Annie Koutrakis, so it's I feel like I'm flanked by some wonderful, wonderful colleagues. And you know, I thought I would start to answer a question with some of the numbers, because numbers don't lie. So the relationship between Canada and Greece, for certain, is terrific. And by the numbers, since CETA, so the agreement between Canada and the European Union, we have seen trade between Greece and Canada increase by 68%. In addition, we in the agriculture agri-food sector, which is really impressive. And then I thought about it. I said, well, of course, I can see why it's so impressive. But $229 million of Canada imports. So we buy $229 million of agri-food products, and this is just the agri-food line, but that's primarily, you know, olives and cheese, of course. And I thought, well, you know, with 300,000 Greek diaspora in Canada, of course this. But the one line that did surprise me was kiwi. I thought, oh yeah, right, there's some great production there. But in terms of increase of exports on agri-food product, it's 57%. So you're seeing the numbers of trade between Canada and Greece increase. And then the most impressive line, and I said this when I was in Greece, 226% increase alone on the cheese line. So this underpins what I think is a very, very strong trade relationship between Canada and Greece. And whether it is investments in agri-foods, as I just talked about, or in many other sectors in trade and investment, it is doing well. Probably one of the most impressive things I saw was the partnership between Aegean Airlines and CAE, and the creation of a partnership of a training center where they're going to train somewhere in the order of 3,500 civil aviation pilots right out of the airport in Athens. And it was so impressive because when I looked out through the tower, it is also solar powered. So I think there's a lot of really exciting things that's happening in Greece, and a lot of exciting things that Canada wants to collaborate and partner in. So I hope with some of the numbers I've shared with you how I think this important relationship and trade is taking place.
Great, thank you very much for this starting points. And Mr. Papathanasis, you've been a great friend of the Toronto Economic Forum, if not the founder of it, as Mr. Moka said earlier. But where do we stand right now, not only on trade, but also on investment opportunities that are opening up?
Well, first of all, allow me to thank my dear friend, Minister Ing, for the warm welcome. She makes me feel like home, although it was my home.
That helps.
And I would say that she would be a great Greek minister, promoting Greece. So I would like also to thank her for all the work she's been doing in order for us to proceed and make steps forward to resolve certain misunderstandings, because I think this is what it's all about, misunderstandings about the application and some technical difficulties we're facing in order to ratify.
Open as possible, to make use of the friendshoring if we need to do so, and to oppose protectionism that seems to, or fight against protectionism.
So how do I start the answer to that one? So maybe the answer to the question of businesses from Greece finding a spot in Canada to grow and to invest. I think that that's excellent because this is, trade is really about two-way trade, and we are living in a world today where the rules-based trading order is something that we have to work even harder to work on, to strengthen, so that trade indeed stays both open but also fair. And what do I mean by that? I mean, Canada has spent, well, let me take one step back. It's really important to Canada because we are 40 million people. 1 out of 6 jobs is related to trade. 2/3 of our economy is related to trade. So it's very, very dependent. So Canada has spent, and certainly under the leadership of Prime Minister Trudeau, we've spent a lot of effort to make sure that we are, on the one hand, strengthening rules-based trade, but also creating and opening markets for Canadian companies to grow into those markets. But it goes both ways because, I often say if you're going to do business with Canada, then you're coming into a safe jurisdiction, one that with rules that you can count on and depend on, and that you would then co-invest or you would create a joint venture. And Canada is the only G7 country, even today, the only G7 with a comprehensive trade agreement with every other G7 country. We have access to the North American market through the Canada-US trade agreement, Mexico, that used to be called NAFTA. If today you're in the United States, you call it USMCA. If you're in Canada, you call it CUSMA. If you're in Mexico, you call it TMEC. But it's NAFTA 2.0. That's what it is. But we also have, of course, CETA and access to that incredible market that is the European Union. But also through CPTPP, the Pacific Rim, so countries like Japan and Singapore and Australia and New Zealand, Malaysia, Vietnam, so growing markets. I'm at the negotiating table right now with countries like Indonesia, so next to the United States, which is a little over 300 million people, Indonesia is 270 million people. We're at the negotiating table with the ASEAN countries, so the Association of Southeast Asian Nations. What does that mean? It means that if you're doing business with Canada, you're doing business with the network of trade agreements, and that is also about fortifying the rules-based trading order, strengthening these relationships. And then maybe the point I would make that actually brings it home is, why is it important? I mean, why is it beneficial for Canada and Greece? Well, if we care through our trade agreements, which we do, because this is what we negotiated, strong environmental protections, strong protections for our workers, that is the price of fairness, right? Inclusive trade that actually creates opportunities for small and medium-sized businesses. What do you care about?
I'm Tula Vexopoulos, Director of the Hellenic Heritage Foundation and Chair. Did I say Hellenic Heritage Foundation? That's because I am a director of the Hellenic Heritage Foundation. I'm also a director of the Hellenic Initiative Canada, and I'm also the chair of the Grants Committee. The THI Canada recently expanded its mandate to be able to support environmental protection and climate change initiatives, so I'm delighted to be chairing the panel this afternoon. I would like to introduce our distinguished panel, Julie de Bruzen. She's the Member of Parliament for Toronto Danforth and Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Environment and Climate Change and the Minister of Energy and Natural Resources. Abigail Koholek, Senior Director of Ecopia AI. Ecopia is a leader in leveraging AI to digitize the world, converting geospatial imagery into maps to drive decision making. And we have Maria Kara, who's joined us from Greece, a humanitarian and advocate for social change and co-founder of Emphasis Nonprofit, dedicated to empowering vulnerable groups in Greece. So thank you very much. And I'm just going to take a seat here and take my mic. Great, I think the mics are working well. We have agreed to an interactive discussion in 3 parts, each part about 10 minutes, focusing on the strengths of the panelists. So, and we will address the big picture policy objectives and targets with respect to climate policy, and then concrete examples at the local level to tackle climate change. We're going to look at the power of AI to help humans find solutions, and on the ground level, look at the responses from those on the ground to devastating natural disasters and opportunities for coordinated efforts. So let's begin now with our first part of the discussion. Let me just set a little bit of a context. As a signatory to the Paris Agreement, Canada's climate policy is aimed at reducing 40 to 45% of greenhouse gas emissions by 2030 and net zero by 2050 to maintain global warming at 1.5 degrees centigrade. The EU has made similar commitments, although their targets are a little more aggressive than Canada's. The Canadian Climate Institute says that Canada has made big strides in cutting emissions, but that more and faster progress is needed, otherwise we're going to fall short of our targets. And of course, the elephant in the room is President-elect Trump, who denies climate change and supports an energy policy anchored on fossil fuels. So my question to you, Julie, is what is Canada's milestones in achieving its climate policy, and what do you see as the opportunities and the challenges for a coordinated response to achieve those targets?
Thank you. There was a whole lot there, and I think that maybe if I could start back to, I know that when I started with this work, I would feel a lot of anxiety about where we were seeing emissions going, what was happening. And in fact, back in 2015 when we formed government, emissions were tracking upwards. So at that point, we were seeing emissions going up. And what was really amazing about that Climate Institute report, the Canada Climate Institute, is it backed up exactly what came out when we put in our inventory with the UN, which is that Canada's emissions are actually tracking down now. So they're now below 2005 levels, and we are on track to meet our 2026 interim targets, which is huge. So that was a really huge ship to turn around. But as mentioned, there's a whole lot more work to do to get to our 2030 targets. But I always like to just kind of start with that trajectory, because really it was moving up, and now it's coming back down. And there are a few big pieces to that. And I thought that report was really helpful in how to set it out. For those of you who are a bit older like me, you might remember if you lived in Toronto 20 years ago, I used to work in one of the buildings downtown. You'd look out across Lake Ontario, and there would be this brown smudge across Lake Ontario in the summer. We used to have about 55 smog days every single year in Ontario. We're now down to 0. And the reason we're down to 0 is because Ontario moved away from coal-fired electricity to non-emitting sources. And so we're not fully non-emitting, we're on that trajectory still, and I think that Minister Lecce talked a lot about what that looks like. But moving away from coal-fired electricity was a very big piece of how Canada's actually moving away to reducing emissions. Ontario was at the forefront in that for sure. Alberta actually beat its targets and is off of coal-fired electricity ahead of time. So that's a lot of where the progress has been. We have an 84% non-emitting grid in Canada. That's one of the cleanest grids in the world. So that's the work that we've done. And that means though that the next part's harder, right? Like the last 16% on the grid, that's harder. You've heard a little bit, and I think Minister Lecce mentioned some of the programs that actually are the federal government working with our provinces, because we have to work with our provinces on everything to get to where we are. So the refurbishment at Darlington, working on SMR technologies, all of those are pieces where we're working together with provinces to try and improve our rates, get to fully non-emitting grid. But the next big piece, and when the Climate Institute did that report, they didn't have it, is what are we going to do about oil and gas emissions? Because those are still actually on the rise in Canada. And so how do we respond to that? 31% of Canada's emissions are from oil and gas. So this week, we just tabled our draft regulations on a cap on emissions from oil and gas. And I am just going to make sure I highlight this piece. It's not about production. It's not a cap on production, but it is a cap on the emissions from the oil and gas sector. And that is going to play a very important role in how we get there. I'm probably running out of time for the amount of time you want to give me here, so I'll just say one more quick thing. From Canada's perspective, a lot of the work that we're doing right now is how do we move our country away from combusting fossil fuels? So what you're seeing with the work we're doing on helping people move from oil heating, which is a lot more expensive, a lot more emitting, to a cheaper source of using heat pumps and moving to more efficient ways of heating their homes. If you're in the city of Toronto, the largest source of emissions is from our buildings. So how do we tackle that? That's a big piece that we're working on. Also, how do we reduce emissions from transportation, from our vehicles? So all those pieces kind of have to fit together, and there's a lot more work to do, but I'm really excited that we've actually bent that curve.
Excellent to hear such good progress that is being made, and thank you for the segue, because right now I think what we need to look at is what I'd like to hear insights and examples of how local authorities and stakeholders are working together to try to achieve concrete, practical steps towards achieving those targets. And so I'd like perhaps maybe Maria, with access to EU funding for climate action, how is Greece responding? And if you can give us some specific examples of the direction that they're moving into.
Thank you very much. I'd like to first say a huge thank you to the Greek Canadian community for inviting me over and giving me this unique opportunity. I'm by no means an expert, so there I have notes, I've done my research. Actually, we were more, as a non-profit, we were more interested in all energy poverty consequences and how that affected the Greek population. But I do have some great news. So I think when you were in Greece, Tuna, in October, we already have Agios Efstratios, which is a tiny little island between Limnos and Lesbos that operated totally energy free and energy independent, may I say. And it's a little island of 250 inhabitants, but for 2.5 hours it managed to operate autonomously using solely green energy. So that's already a practical example of how.
Welcome to the panel on the untapped potential of cooperation in education. I realize that today's forum was focusing primarily on the economic ties between Canada and Greece. However, I feel that education is an equally important pillar of growth, can be an even more important pillar of growth between the two countries. So I would like to thank Simeon and the Deaf Economic Forum as well as THI Canada for including once again education in the discussions, and it's a pleasure to be back to Toronto this year. Let me kick off the discussion by saying that I believe we all agree that cross-educational cooperation is very important through ways which both students and academics can learn, can teach, can do research across educational institutions in different countries. This can only be beneficial for all parties involved. And I think it can add a lot to many areas. It can help enhance the understanding, the international understanding among people. It can enhance the cultural awareness among people. It can also help with providing additional educational and networking opportunities to both educators and students, and enhance, of course, as we said earlier, the economic and diplomatic ties between countries. I'm not fully aware, and I would like to start with that of the depth and the range of educational ties between our two countries. I can only speak with the experience I have from being at the American College of Greece, where we have seen in the recent years a steady increase of students, Canadian students, or students of both dual citizenship, Greek Canadians, coming to study with us, either for a study abroad semester or for a full degree. And plus, through the I want to just mention the very important Heritage Greece program that we have established, and we will talk about that with Alexis again. We have established through the support of the Hellenic Heritage Foundation here in Canada, through which we get about 10 students at the American Colleges of Greece and some more going to Thessaloniki every year for this 2-week summer program. I would like to start with the same question to all the panelists. To the extent that you know, based on your experience from your organizations and institutions, what is the current status of the Greek-Canadian educational ties now? And to what extent you feel that this can be further enhanced? So, Alexis, I would like to start with you.
Well, first of all, I also want to thank. He doesn't want thanks, but we feel your benevolence to help education, even if it's the last item on the agenda. Well, what's the state? The state is one that needs improvement. There are certain, there's a certain amount of traffic, particularly in short-term study abroad programs, summer particularly, and faculty-led programs in Greece. There is no real traffic, I don't think, between Canada and Greece in university level education. University level four-year undergraduate.
It is so.
Well,
but not enough.
Not enough. Yeah. Okay.
So, Alice?
Okay, thank you, Claudia, and thank you, Simeon, for the invitation. Actually, I was thinking throughout the day that everything said had an education component in it, and especially in the relations, but even when the reference was to the American-US elections, the bottom line is education again. So we have to grab the opportunity, and although I have spent almost all my life at the university level education, now I direct Athens College, and I believe it's a unique opportunity that this conference gives us to reach the Greek-Canadian organizations and tell you that there is a great opportunity for your children to study in Greece for a year, for shorter, for summer, and be exposed to Greek civilization. And we have programs that are in English, and we should explore that further. So this is something that we can talk individually, but we're very open to that, and I would like to grasp the opportunity.
Thank you. So, Kostis.
So let me just say what a true honor it is to be in this particular panel and to be sitting next to probably the most beloved professor at the University of Toronto, and I would say the entire country, Robert Austin. You are definitely my favorite professor at the University of Toronto. And why do I say this? I say this because I had the privilege of collaborating with Rob in the creation of the Hellenic Studies program at the University of Toronto. And back then, it was just a long time ago. It was just a student-led grassroots movement, essentially driven by lamb, alcohol, and a whole lot of passion and purpose to bring back the Greek language at the University of Toronto. So, and I know this is going to be one of the main topics in this panel, especially I'm sure that Rob will probably bring this up. So in terms of the types of collaborations, I think that we can really look at diaspora in terms of the potential that can actually create some cross-border collaborations. And to be sitting here talking about this program is a real testament to the power of the diaspora and the power of important people and what they can actually do and help. Rob was actually the first person to take a look at me and say, I have a duty to support students. I think those were your actual words. Yeah. And it was really refreshing because we had come across a lot of institutional friction, some doubt within the community. And throughout all these roadblocks, we were able to find the Hellenic Heritage Foundation. We had support from the counselor. We had support from the institution and these important people that really believed in us. And we were able to actually get the funding, and create this amazing program that is actually now thriving. So it's a true testament of what diaspora can do. And there are a lot of people here themselves that can attest to this. They can really help through these kinds of important issues for education and collaboration between our countries.
Thank you. And now we come to the two professors. Maybe you're more eligible than any of us to talk about the existing ties, but I would like you, before you get into the specifics of your individual partnerships and collaborations, to talk a little bit about the broader picture, to the extent you're familiar about the ties between the two countries.
Sure, yeah. Thank you very much, first of all, for the invitation. I'm honored to be here. It's a very important day and a series of meetings. I would like to say that, to continue from Kostas' positive note, that in fact there is quite a lot of mobility instead of, just perhaps not only at a full year program or a full degree program level, but instead there are maybe more than 10 archaeology trips that Canadian universities sent to Greece, organized through the Canadian Institute in Greece, which I think plays a very important role in this connection. It's basically the institute through which the permission to excavate in Greece is received through the Ministry of Culture. So, and then there are also, it's becoming like a sector now. I mean, Alexis Vlachtopoulos knows this very well, of all the summer abroad courses that we offer in various universities, University of Toronto, York, several other universities, Simon Fraser now. And then, so there is this group of Canadian students, not all of them, in fact, not even the majority of them Greek Canadian, who take these courses. And I think that these are some of the best ambassadors of Greece to Canada. So it is obviously, and beyond, in fact, wherever these people will end up living and working. And then there's also the other aspect of the mobility, let's say, that is becoming more and more productive in many ways through partnerships between the established foundations, for example, and some Canadian universities to facilitate the mobility of undergraduate and in some cases graduate students from Greece to the Canadian universities. That is a memorandum of understanding that facilitates research and training in many cases. So there's quite a few things going on. I think that there is certainly a lot more to build on.
Thank you, everybody. And I want to say thank you, Claudia, very much for hosting us. And Kostas, I have to say thank you because it's not very often you get a student to say you're the best professor in the country. But he was a special guy. And whenever I talk about the Hellenic Studies program at the University of Toronto, I tend to get a little bit emotional because it's actually my favorite program. And the reason it's my favorite is to Kostas' point. A great group of students came to me and said, we need modern Greek language back here. And I said, yeah, we do. And then I was introduced to these guys at the HHF. And we did just become partners, right?
Κύριε Παπαχελά, καλώς ήρθατε.
Ευχαριστώ πολύ, χαρά μου που εδώ στο Τορόντο.
Και εμάς μεγάλη μας τιμή που μας επισκέπτεστε και γιατί κάνετε εξαιρετική δουλειά όλα αυτά τα χρόνια.
Ευχαριστώ πολύ.
Πώς βλέπετε τις σχέσεις εσείς μεταξύ Ελλάδα και Καναδά και τις προοπτικές που υπάρχουν μεταξύ μας?
Νομίζω ο Καναδάς δεν είναι μια χώρα που την ξέρουμε. Είναι πολύ καλό ότι ήρθε εδώ ο Πρωθυπουργός. Αυτό είναι μια ευκαιρία για να καταλάβουν οι Έλληνες πόσο σημαντικός είναι ο Καναδάς. Αυτό που πάντα μας εντυπωσιάζει είναι πόσο ζωντανή είναι η ομογένεια του Καναδά και πόσο αγαπάει και πόσο κοντά είναι στην Ελλάδα. Και βέβαια όλοι ελπίζουμε ότι αυτό το πράγμα μπορεί σε αυτή την εποχή που έχουμε πει, που είναι δύσκολη, ασταθής γύρω-γύρω, να υπάρξει μεγαλύτερη επικοινωνία ανάμεσα στους Έλληνες του Καναδά και τους Έλληνες της Αμερικής. Ξέρω ότι ήδη πάρα πολλοί κόσμος ταξιδεύει. Το ξέρω γιατί κάθε φορά προσπαθώ να βρω πτήση με την Air Canada. Ξέρω πόσο δύσκολο είναι και το καταλαβαίνω.
Είναι πρόκληση.
Οπότε νομίζω είναι μια ευκαιρία γιατί και η Ελλάδα αλλάζει. Είναι μια Ελλάδα που έχει πάρα πολλές ευκαιρίες.
Πραγματικά και εμάς που είμαστε εδώ στην ομογένεια μας χαροποιεί να βλέπουμε την Ελλάδα μας να προοδεύει και να αλλάζει και θέλουμε να συνδράμουμε και να βοηθήσουμε όπως μπορούμε. Νομίζω ότι και αυτό που υπογραμμίστηκε σήμερα κατά το φόρουμ ήταν το γεγονός ότι υπάρχουν κοινές αρχές. Αυτό που λέγανε στα αγγλικά πολλές φορές the same values μεταξύ του Καναδά και της Ελλάδας και αυτό στη σημερινή πραγματικότητα νομίζω ότι έχει πολύ μεγάλη σημασία για το μέλλον.
Πράγματι, πιστεύω ότι και ο Καναδάς και η Ελλάδα είναι δύο χώρες οι οποίες ανήκουν βέβαια στη Δυτική Συμμαχία. Από την άλλη, όμως, είναι δύο χώρες που κάνουν τα πάντα για την ειρήνη, έχουν πολύ μεγάλη ανθρωπιστική προσφορά και νομίζω ότι είναι δύο χώρες που πραγματικά μπορεί ο ένας να καταλάβει τον άλλον. Εγώ αυτό που θα ήθελα πολύ είναι αυτή η ενέργεια που υπάρχει στον Καναδά και στην Ομογένεια και το βλέπω παντού, η πρακτικότητα, η ενέργεια, η διάθεση να υπάρξουν κάποια ρίσκα. Αυτό θα ήθελα πάρα πολύ να το μεταφυτεύσουμε και στην Ελλάδα, γιατί είναι κάτι που το χρειαζόμαστε, ιδιαίτερα μάλιστα η νέα γενιά.
Εννοείται σαν τρόπο σκέψης και σαν τρόπο λειτουργίας στην καθημερινότητα, στην επιχειρηματικότητα.
Χρειαζόμαστε την ενέργειά σας, το πω έτσι.
Θα σας στείλουμε πολύ θετική ενέργεια λοιπόν μαζί σας και πάλι να είστε καλά και σας ευχαριστούμε πολύ.
Ευχαριστώ εγώ. Ευχαριστώ πολύ.
Να είστε καλά.
Εντάξει.
Ναι.
That very kind introduction. You know, you've got a pretty good resume. I think if I sum it up, you're the big brain behind Kathimerini. How's that?
It's a collective brain. I have no idea why I was invited here. Then I discovered Alexander is the co-chairman, so you know, that's all there is there.
There you go. You know what? I don't think we can have anyone who has a better line of sight, not just on what's happening in Greece, but what's happening in Europe, around the world, and in the United States than you here. But you know, maybe before we kind of dig into our little chat, I understand that you have some personal connections to Canada?
I do. I mean, first of all, let me say thank you to John and Alexander and all the volunteers and for all of you. We're very grateful. We're ephenomenous, as we say in Greece, because you really stepped up to help the Patrida when who was in need. We need you now. We're not in a dire situation, but we still need you, and we need your energy, your vision, your practicality, because we really have to untap the talent and the potential which still lies there unused, I have to say, in Greece. So thank you. I really thank you for what you've done for our country. Yeah, two stories. One is...
Are these happy or sad stories?
You tell me.
Okay, there we go.
One is very traumatic. It was the first time I entered Canada, actually. I had a girlfriend who was Canadian when I was an undergraduate. I drove up to upstate New York in my small car. I was stopped at the border. And the guy says in a very kind of severe manner, he says, where are you going? I said, I'm going to Montreal. What are you doing there? I'm meeting my girlfriend. And he said, how much money do you have with you? I said, $30. $30? I said, yeah. Credit card? I said, no, I'm stealing it. Oh, so where are you going exactly? I said, I'm going to my girlfriend's house. And I tell the name, it checks the white pages, I know computers back then. She calls up, the home of my then girlfriend, and the quote-unquote mother-in-law. Who is, French Canadian, doesn't really know much about Greece or anything else, and the border guy says, are you expecting a guest from Greece? From the US. She said, yes, what's his name? She says, pronounces my name correctly, and then she says, why are you asking? Because the guy only has $30 with him. So that was a very traumatic moment. I've had 100 times in Canada. The other story is one of the first scoops I ever had, actually. I came back, I was in the US for 20 years. I come back to Greece, and they give me, it was an election cycle, so they give me the worst job, which is to go and interview the head of the Communist Party. And it doesn't matter when you ask the question, 1950, 1960, 1970, you always get the same answer. So I'm sitting there across, from Aleka Mariga, and I know this is going to be a very boring, really predictable kind of interview. I don't know how I get, the idea, and I said, Mrs. Pavaria, could you tell me, if you became Prime Minister, which country would you like, Greece to look like? She says Canada. And for 3 days, all the newspapers were saying, she went nuts, they were looking for some conspiracy. Anyway, later on, she explained it was the health system. But, still, it was an amazing show back then.
That's great. We'll talk about the U.S. election, obviously. We'll talk about Greece, the Canada-Greece relationship.
I'll have to ask you why the pulse is going to drop.
Yeah,
right?
okay. That's good. You can ask me questions, I can ask you questions, but just roll with the punches tonight. The other thing I'd like to say is that we will have time to take a couple questions, not too many, because dinner will not be served until Alexia and I are finished chatting. So we'll keep that in mind. But what are the thinking of Greece in the last 10 to 20 years? What are the most positive changes that you've seen?
Well, I'll tell you, the best thing has happened to Greece. It's become a boring country. It's a country. I mean, I've been facetious, but to be honest, it's been a country that's going through this political crisis, wars, civil wars, political crisis after another, periods of political instability, and all that. So for me, it's amazing. In a time of instability all around the world, from the UK to the US to Canada, I guess now. Greece is a very stable country, politically, socially, and why is that? Because I think we went through our crisis very early on. We had our own experiments, let's say, with political instability and chaos and all that very early on. So I think this is one of the biggest changes. Also, I believe that Greece has become a much more modern country. A lot of things changed during the fiscal crisis. It was a very brutal adjustment, as you know, fiscal adjustment. But it was also a time where a lot of reforms took place. Sometimes you might not notice it living here, but our civil service has become much better than it used to be. It's much more digital than it used to be, for example. Our tax service is incredibly more efficient and clean than it used to be. There's a lot of private investment in pharma, in tech, a lot of startups, a lot of digital nomads that have come back to Greece. Big companies like Pfizer, for example, they have established hubs up in Thessaloniki, and they're looking now to expand. It was not easy. Albert Bourla was telling me the most difficult thing for him was to convince his own board, his own legal department, to actually establish a hub there. And now everybody's very happy. So I think those are the things that have really, and also I think people have matured. Because I call the leftist period we went through, with Syriza and everything, an expensive tutorial in reality. And I think there's much more consensus now in terms of foreign policy, which is very important, in terms of pro-investment kind of policies and all that.
Yeah, and obviously just being part of the European Union has been a bit of a big game changer. And I know a lot of people would be surprised that, it's Greece not just kind of improving, but leapfrogging, especially on digitized government. I think a lot of Canadians will be surprised that on some areas, Greece is actually ahead of Canada when it comes to digital government.
Yeah, there were amazing things that were done within the first 2 years of this government. One of the best pleasures for me was we always had the Germans pointing the finger at us, because we're always sort of corrupt and underdeveloped and all this. And then I remember when I went to Germany after COVID, people were telling me that they were getting their college certificates handwritten in small cards. And we had it on our phone. I mean, this was amazing. And I was so glad to tell them. It was a sweet moment.
Yeah, exactly. So now, we've heard about the good things that have happened in the last 10 to 20 years. We have to be fair, especially since you're a journalist, right? So we have to be reasonably even-handed. Are there any clouds on the horizon, things that we should be thinking about to kind of avoid or manage when it comes to the future in Greece, when it comes to the economy and its place in the world?
Well, we definitely have a lot of challenges ahead of us. We have a lot of work to do in terms of cutting the red tape. I think the judicial system needs many more reforms. The educational system, a lot of reforms have been implemented, but we still have a lot to do there. We have a big challenge, which is the demographic challenge.
Yeah.
In 2050, we're going to be about 9 million Greeks living back in the homeland. That's a really big challenge. We have climate change, which has severely affected all of Southern Europe, but Greece as well. It's a very expensive and very difficult thing to deal with. And then we have, of course, the elephant in the room, which is Turkey, which is always a challenge, and it's going to be a challenge, I think, especially in this world, which is so unpredictable and so, multipolar. And I think Turkey is really going to be a challenge, for Greece and for the West in the foreseeable future. I don't think it's only an Erdogan thing. It's something that's going to stay with us.
Yeah, obviously with all the things happening in the Middle East and NATO and all that kind of stuff. So let's talk for a little bit about the US election and what's just recently happened. In Canada, I think every country is thinking about, it's kind of like, what does this mean for me, right? Canadians are wondering, what does it mean for Donald Trump to become the president again? And I'm sure Europeans, everyone, the Chinese are thinking about the same thing. Can you share, because of, we heard from Alexander all the different kind of politicians that you've interviewed and you've kind of engaged. Are there any experiences that you're aware of in terms of Greek prime ministers or Greek leading politicians they've had with Trump that you're willing to share?
Yeah, they're not willing to share, but I'm willing to share. So that's, I get paid for that. The first thing which was really funny is when Mitsotakis is elected, Trump is the president. Mike Pence is handling the Greek account back then. So he calls up Mitsotakis, he says, congratulations, Mr. Prime Minister. And Mitsotakis, being very shrewd in this, says, Mr. Vice President, there are two things I'm going to do. I'm going to build up a wall to stop illegal immigration up in the north, and I'm going to cut taxes. So Pence goes to Trump and says, amazing, huh? Yeah, I just talked to this guy and he has the same agenda with us. And Trump says, get another Greek prime minister on the phone. So this is the US ambassador back then, Jeff Byatt. He gets a frantic phone call from the NSC in Washington. Says, Mr. Ambassador, we have good news and bad news. Says, what's the good news? The president is going to call. What's the bad news? We have no idea what he's going to say. And then he calls up Mitsotakis and says, terrific, terrific, you're doing a great job. You're building a wall. Terrific. Well, Mr. President, terrific. That's a great job. You're also cutting taxes. That's terrific. That was the end of the conversation. The second story is when Alexis Tsipras went to meet Trump. Oh. And this was very interesting because I had a good friend who was actually involved in preparing the trip, from the US side. So in the end, they had written this bio saying that, this guy is a communist, blah, blah, blah. And then somebody told them, this is not going to go well. So instead they said, this is a self-made guy who really wants to rock the system. And Trump laughed at us. Oh, that's my kind of guy. Yeah. So poor Tsipras walks in, and for like 2 years he's been like getting all this advice from Bill Clinton, from Obama. Stay in the euro. Don't do anything stupid. Don't get into the fight with the Germans. Stay in the euro. He walks into the White House. They sit at the table. Trump says, it was really stupid to stay in the euro. It was a really stupid decision from the British side. Tsipras is looking around the table, and all the other US people around the table are kind of rolling their eyes, saying, don't worry about it. And then Pompeo steps in and says, Mr. President, this is a NATO country, we want it to be stable, it's important. I know this State Department bullshit, Mike, it was a really bad decision. So those are the two stories.
That's good. Always an exciting time with Donald Trump. But so here's a question at a fairly high level, because I think we all have an interest in this. Does it really make any difference who the president of the United States is in terms of the direction that the country's going in? We talk about the difference between Harris and Trump. Is the U.S. going through a new phase of isolationism, regardless of who's in power, or is it just a situation where just one person is a little less pleasant than another?
Well, personally, I think if you look at the global context, we are at the beginning of a post-American world. I believe that the world order that was established after World War II is not collapsing or imploding, but it's there are a lot of cracks there. And I think Trump is a symptom of that. It's not, and obviously he's going to accelerate the process. The big question is Trump too going to be somebody who's thinking of his legacy and be a bit more cautious and so on? Or is he going to be an unhinged guy who will have no establishment figures like McMaster and all those people around him, but instead he will have lackeys who will just follow his orders? I tend to believe the second. And the question is, what kind of decisions is he going to make, especially in the first 6 months, that are going to affect all of us? First of all, I think in terms of trade, I think tariffs are inevitable. Somehow he thinks that that's the way to solve the U.S. fiscal problems, but also improve the trade situation. I'm really worried about that because I think that's really going to be a great rupture in the world financial system, let's say. I don't know how the Chinese are going to react. That's one. The second change, I think, is going to be felt in Ukraine, in the Middle East, and in China. I think in Ukraine, Zelensky will very soon find out that he's going to lose half of his country.
Yeah.
And there will be nothing he can do about it because if he's going to rely only on the Europeans, which likely him. I think in the Middle East, maybe we'll keep doing what he's doing because there will be not even half-baked effort from the US to stop him in some way. And then the big question mark, in my opinion, is what's going to happen with China. I've been convinced, I was in China recently, I'm convinced that China is going to try to get Taiwan by 2027. And the big question is, what is Trump going to do? Is he going to be more confidential with China? Is he going to draw a red line, or is he going to be transactional and say, well, we don't really care, trade is important, we don't really care about Taiwan, there are no red lines, why should we go and fight over there? Those are very important questions for all of us. And of course, coming from Greece, the big question is, how is he going to handle trade? And there it's a big question.
And so what does this mean for Europe? Like if we were in a world, Europe, think of Europe and NATO, if we're in a world where the US becomes more isolationist, more focused on itself and its kind of domestic political agenda, what does it mean for Europe and NATO?
I have news for you. It also means something, for Canada.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, for us all.
I mean, I think you should get ready, and Europe should be ready to realize that we cannot be the spoiled kids that we were after the war. We cannot be sort of living in this Pollyannish world where everything is okay and the US will pay for our security. And I think we're going to find out, in a very rude way. That's number one. And we don't know what the future of NATO is, because there are two things could happen. One is he could say that Article 5 is not relevant. We're not going to fight if somebody is threatened or he can say that NATO should expand eastwards. And I don't think half of Europe is ready to do that.
Yeah.
So that's a very important thing. I think we're going to go through a period of turmoil. I mean, my gut feeling is the big confrontation will be between the US and China. What China will try to do is pull Europe towards basic, because if tariffs are established towards Europe, there will be a big discussion. So we, continue doing business with China and sell cars and so on. And I think that's going to be a big question. And I'm not sure there's a simple answer.
And the thing is in Canada, and I think it's the same thing in Europe and Greece, we always talk about the unintended consequences of U.S. policy. U.S. policy that is targeting China, that might have a negative impact on Canada, Europe, Greece, and stuff like that. And it's kind of like, oh, that's not really targeted against you. We're focused on China. Really sorry that it's a problem. Now, Alexander, I forgot to ask you, were Alexi and I supposed to cheer people up or depress people? I don't know how we're doing on that. But
we're not well in terms of cheering up.
Yeah, if there are a couple, we have time to take a couple questions. If you have a couple questions, and then I'm going to wrap it up with one last question for you, Alexi. I don't know if there are any questions. I'll take two. Yes.
Hi, Alexi. Welcome to Toronto. Countries that are U.S. allies like Turkey, India, and UAE, they also hedge their bets and manage to have close relations with Russia and China. Do you think Greece is making a mistake by just aligning with the U.S. and not hedging its bets like these countries are and maintaining close relations with Russia and China? And even if Greece wanted to do that, would they be able to under the European Union?
I ask myself that question a lot, because when I see Turkey getting away with murder, it's amazing to me that Turkey is the country that Russia used to evade sanctions. That's the classic example. And then there's this deep fear in the State Department and the deep state in the US that.
Thank you so much for this amazing conversation. Thank you to our DHI Canada Director, Nick Nanos, and thank you to our keynote speaker, Mr. Papakilas, who I'm going to ask to come again. Come again. Everybody from the Hellenic Initiative Canada, I want to thank you for being here tonight and present you with us all here.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And now, καλή όρεξη!
Φανταζόμαστε ότι βρήκατε και εσείς άκρως ενδιαφέροντα τα θέματα και τις απόψεις που εκφράστηκαν κατά τη διάρκεια του φόρουμ, το οποίο, όπως μας είπανε αρκετοί από τους παρευρισκόμενους που είχαν παρακολουθήσει και τα δύο προηγούμενα φόρουμ εδώ στο Τορόντο, ήταν το καλύτερο που έχει διοργανωθεί μέχρι σήμερα. Ευχόμαστε λοιπόν και τα μελλοντικά φόρουμ να είναι επιτυχημένα και να συνεχίσουν να ξεπερνούν τις προσδοκίες, αλλά και να δημιουργούν νέες ευκαιρίες συνεργασίας και σύσφιξης των σχέσεων της Ελλάδας με τον Καναδά.